Chapter 1000. Could all of this have something to do with Mazel? Wang Chang's brow furrowed even tighter as he recalled Mazel's dying words. He already knew all of Mazel's secrets, and Mazel had been utterly defeated in the psychic energy battle. There was no way he could hide anything from Wang Chong. Moreover, his control over the behemoths was merely lacking in agility. Perhaps it was because he had been controlling them for too long, not because there really was a problem. As this thought flitted through his mind, Wang Chong quickly calmed down and looked into the distance. On the ground, King of Giants Garib Hassam's injuries were not as severe as imagined, as he had avoided being struck in any of his vitals. Damn thing! Don't let me find a chance, or else I'll skin you alive and tear you to pieces. Garib Hassam crawled up from the ground, his teeth clenched in fury. Standing on the giant ape's shoulder, Wang Chong only coldly chuckled at these words. He understood Arabic, so he could understand the words King of Giants, but Wang Chong did not even try to argue with him. He only calmly looked at Garib Hassam and gave his order. Boom! The sky darkened. Just as Garib Hassam was cursing fiercely, a huge shadow grew bigger and fiercely slammed down from behind Garib Hassam. Roar! With an earth-shattering roar, the mountainous white bear retracted its paw after knocking Garib Hassam unconscious. Still not smart enough. Wang Chong faintly smiled as he controlled the giant ape to turn around and head back to the front lines. The outcome had been decided. The skyquaking army had fled, and Abu Muslim and Ziyad had chosen to retreat. All that was left was to pursue the Arab soldiers. Unlike before, the Arabs had lost almost all their elites in this battle. Now was the perfect time to strike while the iron was hot. Rumbling could be heard as the giant ape strode forward at high speed. Standing on the giant ape's shoulder, Wang Chong could see that the vast battlefield was filled with panicked shouts and screams. The more than 100,000 Arab cavalry threw down their helmets and armor as they madly fled to the west. Behind them, the Tang soldiers had regrouped into formation and were charging at the Arabs. Wherever the black tide reached, the Arabs would fall in droves. For the first time, the number of Arab corpses on the battlefield far surpassed that of the Tang dynasty. It's time for you to pay the price. Wang Chong looked into the distance and a smile appeared on his face. But soon, a strange feeling surged. Along with the chaotic airflow, Wang Chong suddenly smelled a fishy smell in the wind. Wang Chong didn't care at first, but soon, the fishy smell didn't fade. Instead, it became thicker and thicker. Moreover, Wang Chong felt that the source of the fishy smell seemed to be very close to him. Drip. Suddenly, the sound of liquid dripping came from next to him. It was extremely soft, but to an expert of Wang Chong's level, it sounded like a peal of thunder. More importantly, the fishy smell that Wang Chong could smell had grown several times stronger. This is... Wang Chong subconsciously raised his head, and a moment later, he saw a shocking sight. Black blood was dripping from the giant ape's left ear. The fishy smell that Wang Chong had smelled was coming from this blood. Wang Chong had been focused on the entire battlefield, but when he turned to look at the giant ape's face, he suddenly realized that as the black blood dripped down, the ape's face was clearly in pain. No matter how slow Wang Chong's reaction was, he still felt that something was wrong. His heart thumping, Wang Chong quickly turned his head and looked at the other behemoths. Unsurprisingly, the other behemoths also had expressions of pain on their faces. As for the weakest burning one, Wang Chong had only noticed that it was spitting out flames, but now, Wang Chong noticed that although it was still spitting out flames, it had already lost its aim. It was only because it had no specific target that he could not see it. Not only that, but upon closer inspection, the burning one's body seemed to be trembling slightly, as if it could not stand stably. Wang Chong's heart sank, and his expression instantly changed. Bzzzt, without the slightest hesitation, a mental force instantly shot out, streaking through the air and burrowing into the burning one's forehead like a bolt of lightning. How could this be? Seeing the situation in the burning one's brain, Wang Chong could no longer maintain his composure. Mental power elites could control behemoths by using mental power to occupy the important meridians in the brain. As long as the meridians were normal, Wang Chong would not be too concerned. But when Wang Chong swept his gaze over the burning one's brain, he suddenly realized that the situation of this giant flame lizard was extremely bad. Although the meridians related to mental power in its brain were still normal, the other brain tissues were shockingly showing signs of withering, and some areas were even showing signs of black necrosis. Wang Chong's heart instantly sank. This shouldn't be. Wang Chong's heart was extremely shaken. This situation was definitely not good news. But right now, he had no way of determining whether this was just a coincidence, or if it really was as he had guessed. Bzzt, with a thought, Wang Chong quickly retreated. A mental force shot out and burrowed into the body of the other polar bear. At first glance, it did not seem to have the severe brain atrophy that the burning one had, but when Wang Chong's mental force swept over the other parts of the polar bear's body, his heart instantly sank. He saw that inside the polar bear's body, blood vessels were all bulging and rupturing. Although the polar bear behemoth's outer appearance looked unharmed, its insides had long since been a mess. Not only that, when Wang Chong searched the other parts of the polar bear's brain, he shockingly discovered that 2 of the meridians related to mental power had already cracked. How is this possible? Wang Chong's heart trembled, and his mental force quickly rushed towards the last giant bear. As expected, the last giant bear's brain was in a similarly terrible state. In that instant, Wang Chong had a bad feeling. Could it be that the brains of these behemoths cannot endure long periods of mental control? In the blink of an eye, a thought flashed through his mind. The behemoths were so powerful that not even great generals could compare to them, but their weakness was their brains. Although their bodies were massive, the brains of the 4 behemoths, including the consecrated, were completely disproportionate to their massive bodies. This was why Wang Chong could control them. But this sort of control came with a price. Wang Chong still had no way of confirming whether this brain atrophy was caused by psychic energy. But even if this wasn't the case, there had to be a myriad of connections. The power of the behemoths was the dominant force on this battlefield. Whoever controlled the behemoths would control the battle. Wang Chong was currently faced with a dilemma. He could either continue to control the 4 behemoths until their brains shriveled up and they died, or he could relinquish control over the 4 behemoths and delay their deaths. But once this happened, the behemoths would undoubtedly begin to attack the Tang army. Abu Muslim and Ziyad, who had already fled, might even seize this chance to gather their soldiers and launch a counterattack. If this happened, Wang Chong would fail on the verge of success. Whoosh! The howling winds caused Wang Chong's hair to flutter in the wind. Wang Chong stood motionlessly on the giant ape's shoulder, his mind in turmoil. Should he relinquish control over the behemoths or watch them die? Wang Chong had to make a decision as quickly as possible. Chonger! Hurry! Now is the best time to attack the Arabs. Suddenly, a deep and heavy voice came from the ground. Wang Yan was riding a large horse, shouting at Wang Chong, who was on the shoulder of the giant ape, to bring him back to his senses. Yes, father. Your child understands. Wang Chong blinked and quickly regained his composure. Wang Chong knew what he had to do next. Rumble. The earth quaked as the 4 behemoths once more began to move, leading the army in pursuit of the Arabs. 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th units, hear my order. All of you, stay in the rear and guard against the attacks of the Uzun and Western Turks. Everyone else, pursue. Wang Chong's voice resounded over the battlefield. Although they had won this battle, Daluan Ruozan and his Uzun army were still a hidden danger. If they were attacked from the back while pursuing the Arabs and the city of Talas was occupied, they would lose the greater for the greater good. Yes, Marquis. Energetic shouts came from the rear. At this moment, Wang Chong was like a divine soldier in their eyes. No matter how strong or how many enemies they faced, they had no doubt that they would be able to crush them. Now that he had made up his mind, Wang Chong no longer hesitated. He had the 4 behemoths advance at full speed, so fast that not even the charge of a warhorse could keep up. In a cloud of dust, the behemoths covered 10 zhang with each step. In just a few moments, they had caught up to the fleeing Arab army. Rumble. Fire, bare paws, iron fists, and all other kinds of attacks rained down on the Arab army. Ah! Screams filled the air as large numbers of Arab soldiers died. 60,000, 68,000, 70,000, 80,000. Almost half of the 200,000 Arab cavalry had been killed, and this number was still rising. This was the deepest nightmare for the Arab army. Get out of the way. Don't block my path. I'm a general. Get out of the way. Run. The behemoths are catching up. Ah! Chapter 1001. Stop. Don't panic. In the chaos, an Arab general attempted to restrain the army and reorganize its formation so that it wouldn't trample on one another. But not long after he gave the order, an enormous foot stomped down, pulverizing the Arab general and the soldiers around him into meat paste. Don't worry about the formation. Run. Screams rose from behind them and then quickly died away, as if their necks had been snapped. All of them felt their hair stand on end. The tangible threat of death made even the bravest of Arab soldiers feel their scalps numb and their hearts fill with fear. But now that Wang Chong had decided to stimulate the potential of these behemoths, the fleeing Arab soldiers could not outrun them. 85,000, 90,000, 96,000, the Arab casualties continued to climb. Severed limbs littered the earth, rivers of blood flowed across it, and Arab scimitars and superior armor littered the battlefield. It's over. The Arabs have already lost this battle. There's no doubt about it. The 3 highest commanders of the Uzan Empire were just as gloomy as the Arabs. Without the lips, the teeth would feel the cold. Even the valiant Arabs had been defeated by the Great Tang's edge, so it would be even more difficult for them to defeat the Great Tang. We need to prepare to withdraw. If we stay, we'll be the ones to suffer grievous casualties. For the first time, Wuxia Wuzong began to think about retreating. Just one of these behemoths raised by the Arabs was enough to inflict grievous casualties on them, let alone 4. But the Arabs are still our allies. Before we retreat, should we feign an attack and help them escape? Dusong Mengpoj said with a complex mind. With these final words, Dusong Mengpoj turned his head to Daluan Ruozan. This plan was planned and prepared by Daluan Ruozan. Whether to withdraw or stay, only Daluan Ruozan could make the decision. Daluan Ruozan said nothing, his eyes looking forward, his expression calm. Only his robe flapped in the wind, but neither Wuxia Wuzong nor Dusong Mengpoj could tell what he was thinking. There's no hurry. Daluan Ruozan suddenly spoke. The Arabs truly did lose, but this war is far from as simple as all of you imagine. Daluan Ruozan looked at the gigantic beasts in the distance as a sharp glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. At this moment, on the western side of the city of Talas, the Arab army was being routed. Let's hope it can last as long as possible. This is the last thing we can do. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Even though large numbers of Arabs were falling, Wang Chong was not as excited or elated as he had imagined. His mind was controlling the 4 behemoths, so he could clearly sense the changes in their bodies. Whoosh! The burner continued to spit out streams of flames. Not only were the burner's magma flames inaccurate, but the intensity and heat of the flames were also greatly reduced. Its body trembled violently and swayed. Although it had not fallen, every step seemed to exhaust all the strength in its body. Its body staggered as if it would fall at any moment. Not far from the burning one, the white bear behemoth was growing more and more berserk. It opened and closed its mouth again and again, but not a single sound came out. Only Wang Chong knew that its body was in a terrible state. The meridians that controlled its voice and body had been severely torn, and its movements were becoming more and more uncoordinated and inflexible. Controlling it consumed far more psychic energy than Wang Chong had ever consumed before. Next to the white bear behemoth, the other behemoth was not in much better condition. With every moment that Wang Chong controlled it, the condition of these behemoths worsened. Boom! After an unknown amount of time passed, an earth-shattering boom filled the air. The burning one, the weakest of them all, suddenly slumped to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Then, the burning one lay on the ground, eyes closed, motionless. This sudden development had not only startled the surrounding Tang dynasty soldiers, but also the distant Abu Muslim and Ziyad. It's the burning one. What's going on here? In the distance, the two commanders of the Arabian Empire heard the commotion and turned to look in the direction of Talas, at that fiery lizard in the roiling cloud of dust, their faces stricken with shock. Everyone had witnessed the abilities of the behemoths. If the Tang dynasty had led 4 behemoths in pursuit, no matter how unwilling Abu Muslim and Ziyad were, they would have been forced to order the army to retreat, perhaps even past Samarkand and all the way to Khorasan. But when they saw the motionless burning one in the distance, they glanced at each other and saw the strangeness in each other's eyes. "Milord, this behemoth," Ziyad subconsciously turned to Abu Muslim. The moment the burning one's energy had fallen, it had completely vanished. Another behemoth had fallen on the battlefield of Talas. Ziyad had no idea what had happened, but if there was one person on the battlefield who could single-handedly wound the burning one and even kill it, it could only be Abu Muslim, who cultivated the 72 demon god pillars art. "It wasn't me." Abu Muslim's brow furrowed. Although Ziyad had not finished speaking, Abu Muslim already knew what he was trying to say. The burning one's defense might not be as strong as the consecrated or the other behemoths, but it's still no easy task to kill it. Moreover, I had been fighting with that Tang dynasty Chishi protector general this entire time, so I had no time to deal with it. Ziyad was dumbfounded by these words. If it wasn't Abu Muslim, who else had the ability to kill the burning one? Could it be the Tang people? That would be far too absurd. But the death of the burning one did not slow the pursuit of the Tang dynasty. Tens of thousands of Arabs were slain in droves, their corpses strewn across the western side of Talas. Awoo! After some time, the white bear behemoth suddenly stopped in its pursuit of the Arabs. Its face was ferocious, and its 2 huge bear paws suddenly crazily attacked the ground around it and its own body. Loud rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, and countless gravel was sent flying everywhere. Smoke and dust billowed up into the sky. Ah! Run! The white bear behemoth has gone berserk. Everyone, get away from it. The Tang dynasty soldiers who had been pursuing the behemoth were startled and began to retreat. Given the white bear behemoth's abilities, if it went berserk and attacked the Tang people around it, the ones suffering the most grievous casualties would be their own people, not the Arabs. But they quickly realized that although the white bear behemoth had gone berserk, it had remained rooted to the ground and made no further attacks. The second one, on the giant ape's shoulder, Wang Chong's heart ached as he gazed at the white bear behemoth. He had originally believed that he had gained control of 4 behemoths and obtained a powerful force, but after the first burning one, another behemoth had fallen into a state of near death. The white bear's berserk behavior was its final act before death. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The earth trembled, and a series of earth-shattering booms rang out. After raging for a moment, the huge white bear fell heavily to the ground, breathing its last breath. At the moment of its death, its blood seeped through its cracked skin and dyed the white bear's snow-white fur red. Like dominoes falling, the deaths of the burning one and the white bear behemoth marked the beginning of the 4 behemoths' deaths. After the white bear behemoth, the third behemoth was slain with a roar. It wasn't just the distant Abu Muslim, Ziyad, the thousands of Arabs, and even Wuxia Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoch who were dumbfounded. The four behemoths were like four massive mountains that pressed down on everyone's heads. The pressure they had exerted on the Tang dynasty before was now equivalent to the pressure the Uzan and Arabs were feeling. But no one expected the four giant beasts to die one after another. Now, there was only one consecrated left. In a flash, Wuxia Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoch subconsciously turned to Daluan Ruozan. When the two of them had been preparing to retreat, it had been Daluan Ruozan who had stopped them. Now that they thought about it, it was clear that he had already noticed some clues. "I don't have that much foresight," Daluan Ruozan indifferently said. He continued to stare forward, not even turning his head. But he had long ago seen through Wuxia Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoch's thoughts. "I just thought of a few things from the reactions of those four behemoths. The Arab method of raising the behemoths and the medicine they used to feed them all come from an ancient civilization that dates back at least tens of thousands of years. There is nothing that can remain intact after such a long period of time. Thus, the Arab method of raising the behemoths must have been flawed and naturally flawed. If this wasn't the case, they wouldn't have been so easily controlled." With these final words, Daluan Ruozan turned to Wang Chong on the giant ape's shoulder. "Prime Minister, why don't we use this chance to attack them from the back? Perhaps we can turn defeat into victory. Not only will we defeat the Tang dynasty, but we can also make Abu Muslim and the Arabs feel gratitude toward us." A voice suddenly came from the side. It was Huoba Senji. He had been standing next to Daluan Ruozan, Wuxia Huizong, and Dusong Mengpoch, and he had clearly heard every word that had been said. Huoba Senji had been quiet for a very long time, finally speaking. "It's not that easy. Do you see the army in front of Talas? This young marquis has been on guard against us for a long time." Chapter 1002. Of the four behemoths, only one was still alive. Just one was enough to deal a destructive blow to Uzan. Moreover, an army filled with righteous indignation was bound to win. The Tang dynasty had just defeated the Arabs, and their morale was at its peak. Recklessly attacking them now was not a good idea. "Wang Chong, in the end, the borrowed strength isn't your true strength. You've already lost your greatest barrier, and everything has returned to square one. Let's see what you do next." Daluan Ruozan mentally muttered to himself. Daluan Ruozan's lips curled into a smile as he looked at the giant ape that had stopped at some point and the young figure on its left shoulder. For some reason, the moment he saw the Arabs retreat, he felt a little more relaxed. In the end, Wang Chong had not died to the Arabs. He finally had a chance to realize his dream, to personally defeat Wang Chong in the fields of strategy and strategy. In the distance, several thousand zhang from the city of Talas, war drums resounded through the air. Standing on the giant ape's shoulder, Wang Chong finally gave the order to withdraw. With Wang Chong's order, the advancing Tang army suddenly seemed to run into an invisible barrier and stopped their pursuit. Fonglin Mountains was a place where orders were strictly enforced. At this moment, the Tang dynasty army displayed a superb level of military discipline and training. "Chonger." A dignified voice, extremely familiar, resounded through the air. Wang Yan, dressed in armor and riding a large horse, stood on the ground, a hint of worry in his eyes. "How is the giant ape doing? Can it still hold?" The giant beasts fell one after another. The death of each of these behemoths would cause a huge shock to both sides of the battlefield. Even now, Wang Yan still didn't understand what was going on, nor did he ask. But the fact that one behemoth after another was dying was clearly not good. "It's fine. The consecrated can still hold on," Wang Chong indifferently said. Although he was anxious in his heart, he did not reveal any of it. The death of the giant beast was inevitable. No matter what the specific reason was, it was already a fait accompli. More importantly, the death of the three giant beasts had already caused a subtle change to the battlefield. Up ahead, on the western horizon of the city of Talas, the retreating Arabs had begun to slow down. Although they were still badly shaken, they were no longer as panicked and fearful as before. From his position on the giant ape's shoulder, Wang Chong could clearly see Abu Muslim and Ziyad gathering the army. I hope this giant ape can last a little longer. At this thought, Wang Chong turned his head and looked at the giant ape beside him. Both of the great ape's ears were dripping with black blood. From Wang Chong's perspective, even the corners of the great ape's eyes and nose were dripping with black blood. The stench in the air was very strong. The great ape was in an extremely bad state. Its breathing was heavy and ragged, like bellows, and its aura was rapidly weakening. Wang Chong was doing his utmost to slow down the death of the great ape's brain, minimizing the amount of psychic energy he could use to control it, but the great ape's death still seemed inevitable. All Wang Chong could do now was delay the death of the great ape for as long as possible. Abu Muslim isn't easy to deal with. With the death of 3 behemoths, it seems like Abu Muslim has come back from the ashes and is beginning to covet the Tang dynasty once more. Chonger, if the last behemoth dies as well, we'll have to prepare for the worst. Wang Yen worriedly said. Before this westward march, none of them had heard of the name Abu Muslim, but now, there was probably no one who didn't know of the Arabian Empire and Abu Muslim. The strength of this empire was far greater than they had imagined. And as the highest commander of the Arabian East, Abu Muslim was like a tiger or a wolf. As long as there was the slightest opening, he would take advantage of it, never letting go of a chance to destroy or subjugate his foe. It wasn't that Wang Yen had never encountered a formidable foe in his life, but he had never encountered an imperial great general like the governor of Iron and Blood, who had such an intense desire to conquer. This man seemed to have been born for war. In his body, the desire to conquer seemed to transcend the individual life, becoming an instinct. Father, be at ease. He won't. Wang Chong suddenly smiled at Wang Yan's words. He gazed into the distance, his gaze incomparably sharp, as though he could see through everything. The Arabs have suffered grievous losses, probably losing even more people than we did. The Behemoth army is already under my control, and the Skyquaking army has lost more than half its soldiers. Without the help of these 2 armies, Abu Muslim doesn't have much of an advantage over us. More importantly, the morale of the Arabs doesn't allow them to endure another battle. At the end, Wang Chong's expression was resolute. As a war saint, Wang Chong had seen far more than the average person. The Tang dynasty had been able to rally their morale and launch a counterattack because they had found a flaw in the behemoth, the most crucial part of the battlefield. Moreover, they had used the psychic energy domain to completely rewrite the battle. By using the abilities of the behemoth, Wang Chong was able to rally the morale of the Tang dynasty's army back to its lowest point, allowing it to pursue the Arabs in a single spurt. But the Arabs were panic-stricken, fearful, and uneasy. As long as the behemoth still existed, it would be an enormous deterrent. In these circumstances, the morale of the Arab army had plummeted, and it was simply impossible for it to launch another battle against the Tang dynasty and reverse the course of the war. The only person who could do anything was Abu Muslim. However, it was just a thought for a single person to take on an entire legion. Moreover, after so many battles, even Abu Muslim had probably used up a lot of energy and weakened his strength. His situation was not optimistic. While Wang Chong was observing Abu Muslim and the Arab army, Abu Muslim was also observing the Tang army, which had suddenly stopped its pursuit. Wang Chong's judgment was correct. Abu Muslim's current condition was not very optimistic. Using an ancient bronze artifact like the Eye of the Demon God did not come without a price. Resisting the attacks of 4 behemoths alone was not as easy as imagined. Abu Muslim's strength was no longer at its peak. Have you brought the person? Abu Muslim suddenly asked without turning his head. Lord Governor, he has arrived. A boorish voice replied from the rear. A fierce Arab general, his body as sturdy as a mountain and wearing full armor, through a scarlet-robed attendant so thin that only bones remained. Boom! The attendant was smashed to the ground in a cloud of dust. Cough, cough. The red-robed attendant coughed as he crawled up from the ground, his face covered in blood. These attendants and servants of Mazel didn't know any martial arts, and their bodies were not as strong as martial artists. A single smash had left him with significant injuries. However, the red-clothed attendant had no time to care about his injuries. Looking at the majestic figure in front of him, the red-clothed attendant was filled with fear. His legs were even trembling due to excessive fear, as if he would collapse at any time. Lord Governor. The attendant's voice trembled as if he was on the verge of tears. Abu Muslim slightly creased his brow, but he quickly forgot about this matter. Let me ask you, what happened to those behemoths? Their bodies were clearly intact and not fatally wounded, so why did they suddenly die? The behemoth army was the strongest force of the Arabian Empire, far surpassing any other army. It was also the force that the Caliph placed the greatest importance on. It was precisely for this reason that Abu Muslim had decided to mobilize the behemoth army when he realized that Talas would be difficult to take. But the behemoth army had first been controlled and then mysteriously died. If this news were to get back, the entire empire would be thrown into turmoil. Those factions that had been subdued and suppressed by the empire in the past would probably begin to grow disloyal and restless. There was even a chance that they might rise up in revolt again. Milord, the behemoths died because of their brains. Their brains aren't that powerful. The red-robed attendant's voice was filled with fear, and his forehead was drenched in cold sweat. In just a few moments, his palms and feet were covered in sweat. Brains? What do you mean? Abu Muslim suddenly turned his head. Next to him, even Ziyad turned his head, confusion on his face. The two supreme commanders stared at each other, the invisible pressure seemingly tangible. The red-robed attendant's expression turned even more fearful, and his head dropped to his waist. I don't know the specifics, but when I was at Lord Mazel's side, I once inadvertently heard him say, the red-robed attendant trembled in fear, not daring to hide anything. Although the behemoths have enormous bodies, their brains are very small and fragile. They can't endure psychic energy for long periods of time or too much control. Thus, unless absolutely necessary, Lord Mazel rarely uses psychic energy to control the behemoths. He mostly uses supplementary methods, doing his best to use the instincts of the behemoths to destroy and destroy. Although the behemoths are powerful, they are still essentially animals, acting on instinct. This instinct isn't a problem, and they have no problem in attacking cities or destroying strategic towns. All we need to do is make sure that the behemoths don't get too close to each other. I heard all of this from Lord Mazel. Chapter 1003. Abu Muslim and Ziyad glanced at each other, the two highest commanders deeply frowning. They had never heard a single word of what the red-robed attendant had said before. But who could have imagined that the behemoths would have such a major flaw? So if it was a psychic energy practitioner, they could easily control the behemoths. Did the behemoths also die from excessive psychic energy control? Abu Muslim asked. Abu Muslim had never imagined that the Chishi Protector General of the Tang dynasty would also be a psychic energy expert. Now that he thought about it, Mazel had probably died for the same reason. That's not all. To Abu Muslim's surprise, just when he thought that he knew all the secrets and answers, the red-robed attendant hesitantly said something else. In truth, when the behemoths were created, the higher-ups had already considered this point. In order to prevent other psychic energy experts from controlling the behemoths, the high priest had long ago planted a seal in the minds of the behemoths. All the behemoths could only submit to Lord Mazel and obey his orders. If Lord Mazel were to die, the seal the high priest planted in the minds of the behemoths would explode, killing them one by one. No one can truly control our behemoths for a long period of time. The high priest. This name made both Abu Muslim and Ziyad feel like they had been pricked by a needle. A hint of apprehension and deep respect appeared in their eyes. Every empire had a few extremely unique existences, and the high priest was one of them. Abu Muslim had heard of his name, but he had never had the chance to meet him. It was rumored that the high priest was more than 200 years old. Abu Muslim had even heard of his name when he was still a youth. Everything about him was shrouded in mystery. In the Arabian Empire, there were even rumors that he had obtained Solomon's legacy. Others said that he had obtained the art of immortality. But no matter which one it was, there was one thing that was certain. The high priest wielded supreme authority in the empire. No governor or great general would dare to offend or fear him. In an instant, the air was silent and the surroundings were completely silent. "Sir, if it's that person, then it's no wonder." Ziyad's sudden words broke the silence. "Yes." Abu Muslim nodded, his expression somewhat relaxed. Even though he could not escape the blame for this defeat and Mazel's death. However, if everything was related to that person, then his responsibility would be much smaller. More importantly, if the high priest had really prepared in advance and made so many preparations, then perhaps this war was far from a complete defeat. There was still a chance to turn the situation around. "Pass down my order, the army is to retreat 50 li. Retreat." Abu Muslim suddenly ordered as he looked forward. Ziyad and the other Arab generals were dumbfounded by this order. "But, sir, are we really going to give up just like that?" Ziyad had an unwilling look on his face. The burner was dead, the reaper was dead, and the other behemoth was dead as well. Of the 4 strongest behemoths, only the consecrated was left. As long as the consecrated fell, the Arabs would definitely have a chance to stage a comeback. Ziyad had originally believed that Abu Muslim would at least remain and wait for a chance to counterattack. But he hadn't expected for Abu Muslim to so decisively retreat. This is not giving up, but reorganizing the army. Today's timing is extremely unfavorable to us. For behemoths are dead, more than half of the skyquaking army has been killed, and 100,000 cavalry have been killed. Whether we admit it or not, we can no longer fight today, Abu Muslim sternly said. He was even more unwilling than Ziyad. As the highest commander of the army, there was no such thing as defeat in Abu Muslim's dictionary. But this battle had already been lost. Whether he admitted it or not, it was a fact. The urgent task at hand was not to tangle with the Tang dynasty, as that would only be the bravery of a brute. The most important thing was to learn from this defeat and find a better opportunity to counterattack. Retreat. In this battle, I underestimated that Qixi protector general of the Tang dynasty. His role in this battle was far greater than we imagined, even surpassing that of Gao Xianji. Whether it is in terms of thinking, strategy, courage, or ability to scheme, this person is probably our greatest foe. If Arabia wants to conquer the East and unify the continent, this person will probably be our greatest foe. Abu Muslim's eyes were sharp as he stared at the youth on the giant ape's shoulder. At this moment, Abu Muslim felt a little regret. He suddenly thought back to those spies he had sent to Qixi. After completing the report on the western regions, Qixi and Longxi had been the next targets. But at the time, Abu Muslim had believed that it was enough to destroy Gao Xianji and his Anxi Protectorate army. As for Qixi and Longxi, it would not be too late to wait until he defeated Gao Xianji and occupied Anxi. Thus, the intelligence gathering and spying on these two places had not been very thorough. He had not even paid much attention to the fact that his great general, Fomenlinta, had been replaced by a youth. From this point of view, the reason for the defeat of this battle had long ago been clear. Do you see the consecrated? He's left the consecrated there precisely to deal with us. He won't give us any chance to take advantage of this battle. Nothing unexpected will happen if he continues to stay. Retreat. With these final words, Abu Muslim waved his hand, his voice firm and unquestionable. Rumble. Following Abu Muslim's order, the nearly 100,000 Arab cavalry galloped off to the west, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. In front of the first defense line, 4,000 to 5,000 zhang from Talas, the Tang dynasty soldiers silently watched all this and breathed a long sigh of relief. Both the great Tang and Arabia had suffered grievous losses over the course of this battle, and all the soldiers were deeply fatigued. Everyone retreat. Wang Chong gave a profound glance into the distance, and then he quickly turned his head and steered the giant ape toward the city of Talas. In front of Talas, countless soldiers were bustling about, and in the center of these soldiers were the wounded. Although the Tang dynasty had managed to win this battle, it had also paid a heavy price. Countless soldiers and horses had been wounded by the attacks of the behemoths and the giants. "Milord, how are you?" Leaping down from the giant ape, Wang Chong did a somersault and landed steadily on the ground. After which, he parted the crowd and swiftly walked up to Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli. Whether it was Gao Xianji or Qing Qianli, neither of them was in very good condition. Wang Chong scanned them and saw that their armor was in tatters and their bodies were drenched in blood. Their auras were also in disarray. They were no longer at the great general level, and it seemed like they would find it very difficult to even maintain the Saint Martial realm. Not good. Qing Qianli shook his head as he supported Gao Xianji, his expression fraught with concern. Milord was already injured while fighting the behemoths, and now he's fighting Abu Muslim all by himself. His injuries are extremely severe. I've already done my best to use energy to protect his organs, but the situation is still not optimistic. Everyone had witnessed Abu Muslim's strength. His 72 demon pillars art had allowed him to fight the consecrated on his own, something that probably no one else present could do. And his defenses were so powerful that he could take the attacks of the behemoths without dying. One could easily imagine the price Gao Xianji had paid to fight Abu Muslim in his weakened state. Don't listen to his nonsense. The situation isn't as serious as he says. I won't die yet. Gao Xianji waved his hand and squeezed out a weak smile. Wang Chong, can the consecrated really not hold on? It's very difficult. Wang Chong shook his head. Even though Gao Xianji was injured, his perception was still as sharp as ever. It was clear that he had sensed something from the consecrated's actions. I've already done all I can to prolong its life, but there are some things that cannot be reversed. In 3 or 4 days at most, this giant ape will be dead, Wang Chong said. The morale of the army depends on it. If the giant ape falls, it will definitely have a major impact on the army. More importantly, Abu Muslim won't easily give up. He's already sensed an opportunity and is certain to come back in the future. Gao Xianji said. Although he was heavily injured, he was still most concerned about the entire battlefield. He won't have a chance. Wang Chong indifferently said. And since he didn't succeed this time, he won't have a chance in the future. We can't be careless. Abu Muslim is too powerful. In our current situation, none of us can stop him. We'll have to rely on you and General Wang. Gao Xianji said, his heart heavy. Gao Xianji had originally been strong enough to stop Abu Muslim, but the situation had changed. If even the giant ape died, not many people in the Tang dynasty would be able to deal with him. Milord is correct. Milord and I probably won't be able to help you. We'll have to rely on you for everything. Qing Qianli also had a heavy heart. Although his injuries were not as severe as Gao Xianji's, they were not optimistic either. Ziad was stronger than him, and the bronze ocean ring in his hand was able to inflict severe injuries on Qing Qianli every time they collided. The price they had paid in this battle was far greater than it appeared on the surface. Relax. The situation isn't as bad as you think. To their surprise, Wang Chong smiled at their words. He was in a relaxed mood, not as heavy as he had imagined. Chapter 1004. If milords are only worried about Abu Muslim, there's no need to worry, because I've already thought of a solution. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Roar! As he spoke, a heaven-shaking roar resounded over the battlefield, attracting the attention of countless people. Damn Tang people, I'll definitely kill you. You despicable lowlife, using a behemoth to ambush me. If you have the ability, release me and fight me one-on-one. That is the conduct of a true warrior. This thunderous voice, brimming with fury, resounded over the skies of Talas. Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli's eyebrows twitched as they looked in the direction of the voice. They saw a 30-meter-tall giant clad in heavy armor. His body was tied up, and he was being grabbed by the giant ape with one hand. The giant was stamping his feet in rage and shouting. Wang Chong faintly smiled, and under the flabbergasted gazes of the pair, he suddenly lunged toward the captured king of giants, Garib Hassam. Wang Chong stopped in front of the king of giants. Speak. What last words do you have before you die? Wang Chong raised his head and looked at the king of giants in front of him. At this moment, Garib Hassa was like a chicken in the giant's hand, suspended in midair. Buzz! Hearing this, Garib Hassam's pupils shrank, and a trace of fear finally appeared on his furious face. At this moment, he finally understood that this human was far more terrifying than he had imagined. Release me. Human, you can't do this. I am the king of giants, so you can't kill me. If you release me, the Caliph will definitely give you a massive compensation. Are these your final words? Wang Chong raised his head and smiled. No, no. No. I still have things to say. You can't do this to me. Garib Hassam's face was stricken with fear, and he wanted to say more. But this time, Wang Chong ignored him. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. Wang Chong's entire body flickered with red light, and his robe fluttered. He suddenly raised his hand and pressed it heavily on Garib Hassam's head. In an instant, Garib Hassam's body was like a punctured ball. The vast and boundless energy poured into Wang Chong's body like a river. After more than an hour, Wang Chong finally absorbed the last drop of energy in Garib Hassam's body. Accompanied by a shrill scream, Garib Hassam's body drooped and immediately stiffened. His life force also disappeared without a trace. Unbelievable. I didn't expect the energy in this giant king to be so much more than I thought. Wang Chong slowly withdrew his energy, his heart bursting with joy. His greatest harvest this time was probably this giant king. In this battle, Wang Chong had fought one battle after another and had consumed a great deal of his energy. But after absorbing the terrifying energy in the giant king, Wang Chong had replenished all the stellar energy he had consumed and returned to his peak state. His cultivation had even soared from Saint Martial Tier 8, to Saint Martial Tier 9, the Brigadier General level. Not only that, Wang Chong's strength continued to rise, showing signs of reaching the peak of the Saint Martial realm. He was only a sliver away from breaking through. Now, there's only one thing left. Wang Chong exhaled and quickly turned to Qing Qianli and Gao Xianji. These two highest commanders of the Anxi Protectorate Army had long ago been dumbfounded by Wang Chong's actions. Wang Chong had actually absorbed all the stellar energy in the giant king right under their noses. This was simply inconceivable. After their initial shock, the two commanders of the Anxi Protectorate Army couldn't help but feel a tinge of admiration and admiration. I finally understand why he told us not to rush. Qing Qianli muttered. With this sort of technique, his future accomplishments will probably surpass any one of us. Perhaps not even Abu Muslim will be able to compare to him in the future. Gao Xianji sighed in praise. Wang Chong was only 17, not even 18, yet he had already reached this level of accomplishment. A normal person would assuredly feel a sliver of envy upon seeing someone stronger than them, but not Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli. On the contrary, the two of them were sincerely happy and gratified. For the Central Plains to have such a person was the fortune of the Tang dynasty, the fortune of the world. Milords, I must trouble the two of you to meditate and cooperate with me." Suddenly, the air currents surged and a familiar voice rang out beside their ears. This time, both Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli cooperated and sat down cross-legged. They focused their minds and remained motionless. At practically the same time, two palms, fair as jade, slender, pressed down on Qing Qianli and Gao Xianji's backs, one on the left and one on the right. In the blink of an eye, an enormous amount of stellar energy surged into their bodies like a raging sea. Wang, in the blink of an eye, the two's auras surged and grew at an astonishing speed. Not only that, the boundless stellar energy surged into every part of their bodies, helping to repair their damaged organs and meridians. After some time, when the white wisps of energy above their heads slowly disappeared, Wang Chong finally retracted his palm and began to slowly retract his technique. "Milords, these are 2 pills. After swallowing them and resting for a moment, they will help you recover your energy faster and heal your injuries." As Wang Chong spoke, he took out 2 pills the size of pigeon eggs and handed them over. On the other side, Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli slowly opened their eyes. A formidable aura burst out from their bodies like a storm. Just from the strength of this energy, who would believe that the two of them had been heavily injured not too long ago? The two did not immediately take the pills from Wang Chong. Instead, their bright eyes began to examine the young face before them as if they were seeing him for the first time. The two commanders of the Anxi Protectorate Army had originally believed that they had a very good understanding of Wang Chong, but every time they thought this, Wang Chong would bring them a new surprise. In such a short time, 80% of their injuries had been healed and all their energy had been restored. Not even top-class figures like Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli could have imagined such a feat. "Lord Wang, you've worked hard. Have a good rest and leave the rest to us." The two of them took the pills from Wang Chong's hands as they stood up. Wang Chong smiled, an almost imperceptible hint of exhaustion in his eyes. He nodded and did not insist. Reporting. Just when Wang Chong was preparing to leave and rest, he heard hurried footsteps, a voice tinged with panic. "Milords, the giant ballistae have been destroyed. Both giant ballistae have been destroyed by the enemy." "What?" The 3 commanders trembled at these words, and even Wang Chong turned his head to look. The 2 giant ballistae held an extremely important strategic position. Even though the threat of the behemoths no longer existed, as long as the giant ballistae existed, the Tang dynasty would be able to intimidate all non-human beings. No one could guarantee that the Arabs did not have other special tricks up their sleeves. The giant ballistae had been conceived and created by Wang Chong. Although he could still create more giant ballistae, the presence of these 2 giant ballistae would be extremely important to the stability and morale of the army. With so many casualties in this battle, the potential value of the giant ballistae was far greater than its actual value. Was it the skyquaking giants? Wang Chong asked. Only the skyquaking giants had the strength to destroy the giant ballistae. But he was still a little confused. The skyquaking giants should have already been driven away by his behemoths, so why would the messenger report the destruction of the giant ballistae now? "Lord Protector General, it's not like that. The one who destroyed the giant ballistae was the celestial wolf great general of the Western Turkic Khaganate, Wuxia." The messenger lowered his head and said something that left everyone flabbergasted. For a moment, all 3 of them, including Wang Chong, were dumbfounded. "Let me explain this matter." Suddenly, an aged voice rang out. Just as the 3 of them were feeling confused, Zhang Shouji led a few craftsmen through the crowd and hurriedly walked over. While Zhang Shouji was explaining how the ballista had been destroyed to the army, a sturdy figure was riding a divine steed in the distance, kicking up a cloud of dust as it galloped towards the hills in the distance. "Prime Minister, Wuxia has returned." On the distant hills, 3 pairs of eyes had been focused on Wuxia, their gazes following Wuxia's movements. But when they looked at the celestial wolf great general, both Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoch had rather strange looks in their eyes. The nearby Mutri great cavalry commander, Huoba Senji, was even more straightforward. Although he was only a brigadier general, Huoba Senji made no attempt to conceal the contempt in his eyes as he stared at the celestial wolf great general. Humph, what can he do if he doesn't come back? The battle is already over, Abu Muslim has retreated, and he hasn't even seen Wang Chang's face. Is he going to stay there and embarrass himself so that the Tang people can laugh at him? Huoba Senji jeered. Nearby, Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj couldn't help but widen their eyes at these words, but neither of them said anything. The celestial wolf great general had gone there in a passionate and heroic manner, but as soon as the battle began, he had become embroiled in a fierce battle with the Arab skyquaking giants. As for the main character, Wang Chong, Dewusili hadn't even seen his face, so it was no wonder that Huoba Senji looked down on him. In truth, Huoba Senji was already being quite generous by not saying that he had an undeserved reputation. You can't say that. Dewusili was just a little unlucky. No matter how you put it, it's a fact that he destroyed the last giant ballistae of the Tang dynasty. He did at least have some achievements. Dusong Mangpoj thought about it and decided to speak up for Dewusili. Chapter 1005. The giant ballistae had been used by the Tang dynasty to deal with the Arabian behemoths, but now that 6 of the 7 behemoths had been killed and the last giant ape was clearly on the verge of death, these giant ballistae had been rendered useless. Whether or not Dewusili destroyed them would have little effect on the war. Dewusili's actions seemed more like he was trying to save some face. Everyone was well aware of this, though no one had said it out loud. Humph, what do you mean by fighting with the giants? I saw that boy from the Tang dynasty controlling those 4 behemoths and knew that he couldn't win, so I intentionally found those giants to stall for time. Is everyone so stupid that they can't see it? Huoba Senji sneered. Although the Uzan did not revere martial arts as much as the Arabian Empire, it was still a fierce people who worshipped true heroes. At the start, Huoba Senji had been full of expectations for Dewusili, but his actions had made it impossible for him to revere him. Gallop. In the distance, a cloud of dust rose. Dewusili seemed to understand that he had no face to see anyone, so he turned around and headed toward the Turkic camp. For a moment, the hills were quiet, no one saying a word as they watched the celestial wolf great general Dewusili vanish from the Turkic camp. The high hills were completely silent. After an unknown period of time, everyone withdrew their gazes. Even though no one said anything, even Dusong Mangpoj felt a little embarrassed for speaking up for Dewusili, so one could easily imagine the reactions of the others. All of you are looking down on Dewusili too much. Duluan Ruozan spoke with a wave of his sleeve. His back was facing the crowd. His long hair and robes fluttered in the strong wind, giving off a feeling of elegance and freedom. If Dewusili only had this much ability, he wouldn't have been able to sit on the position of Celestial Wolf Great General. These words quickly attracted everyone's attention. Huishu Wuzong, Dusong Mangpoj, Huoba Senji, and the surrounding officers all turned their heads. Prime Minister, you mean? Dewusili is deliberately hiding his strength? Huishu Wuzong asked tentatively. It's not that he's hiding it. His goal has always been very clear. It's just that you guys haven't seen through it. Duluan Ruozan didn't look back, but he knew what everyone was thinking. Prime Minister, with all due respect, it's not that I don't believe you, but I really can't see what's so great about Dewusili. From the start of this war until now, I really haven't seen him achieve anything. Huoba Senji said. It wasn't that Huoba Senji didn't believe in Duluan Ruozan, but he couldn't agree with Dewusili's actions. Duluan Ruozan chuckled, but he made no retort. Huoba, there are some things that you can't just look at on the surface. Dewusili's gains are actually much greater than any of you imagine. Did none of you see that when he left, he went alone, but when he returned, there was something extra on the back of his horse? What? These words left everyone flabbergasted. Dewusili's operation had failed. He had gone out full of ambition and returned with his tail between his legs. This was the only thing they noticed. Wang Chong wasn't dead, so he couldn't say that he had gained anything. As for whether there was something extra on the back of his horse, they really hadn't paid any attention. But Daluan Ruozen's words had reminded them of something. For a moment, everyone fell into contemplation, a look of recollection appearing in their eyes. Soon, everyone's expression became subtle. It seems like when Dewussely returned, there was someone extra on his horse. An Uzan general said. Hearing his words, the others also recalled it. After all, it was something that happened not too long ago. Everyone could still remember it clearly. But is there anything special about this matter? Huoba Senji frowned and asked. Even if they had confirmed this, they still couldn't understand why Daluan Ruozen brought up this matter. Could it be that everything was different just because Dewussely brought someone back? If Dewussely's target was Wang Chong from the start, there's nothing special about this matter. But what if that's not the case? If Dewussely's target wasn't Wang Chong from the start, would you still think so? Daluan Ruozen smiled and said. Ah! For a moment, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Huoba Senji was stunned by Daluan Ruozen's words. His mouth opened, but he couldn't say a word. That's right. If Dewussely's target was Wang Chong from the start and came back empty-handed, he naturally couldn't blame the others for looking down on him. But what if his real goal wasn't Wang Chong's? Everyone was prejudiced by Dewussely's bold words, so they didn't think about this problem at all. Daluan Ruozen sensed the commotion behind him and smiled without saying a word. Dewussely was indeed impressive. If he wasn't careful enough to notice some details that the others didn't, he would have been deceived by Dewussely like Huishu Wuzong and Huoba Senji. But since he was known as a wise minister, how many things in this world could really escape his eyes? Some things can't just be heard from others. You have to see how they do it. Daluan Ruozen looked at the sky and said calmly. He was not a pure scholar, but he exuded a strength of character, temperament, and intelligence that any scholar would admire. Dewussely is the kind of person who is skilled at hiding his true goals. How could someone who was able to sit on the throne of the Western Turkic Khaganate and even defeat biting Protector General in Sishan be as unbearable as all of you say? He's just too good at hiding. But, Prime Minister, just what sort of person is worth Dewussely going to such great lengths to kidnap? And why did he intentionally hide it from us? Huishu Wuzong suddenly stepped forward and asked the crucial question behind Daluan Ruozen. If the Celestial Wolf Great General Dewussely really was as scheming as Daluan Ruozen said, then they weren't the ones laughing at Dewussely, but Dewussely. But not even Huishu Wuzong could understand why Dewussely was doing this. What else could it be? The only thing more important than killing Wang Chong is his formation phenomena. Daluan Ruozen grinned, his casual words revealing Dewussely's true goal. Rumble. It was like an enormous rock had crashed down, and a single rock gave rise to 1,000 ripples. The hearts of everyone rose and fell, and a tempestuous storm arose. Formation phenomena. No one had expected Dewussely's true goal to be this. But anyone who knew the weight of these 4 words knew that Dewussely's actions were completely understandable. Even the Mutri Great Cavalry Commander, Huoba Senji, was stunned, a pensive look in his eyes. Daluan Ruozen smiled, knowing that everyone had understood. From the very start, Dewussely wasn't targeting Wang Chong. Didn't any of you notice in the previous battle? When Wang Chong's Wuxian cavalry used formation phenomena, Dewussely had a completely different look in his eyes. I once sent people to investigate this Celestial Wolf Great General of the Western Turks, and although I didn't find much information, all the information I gathered was the same: this Celestial Wolf Great General has an intense thirst for power. Formation phenomena is the highest level of formations. Not even Dewussely's Celestial Wolf illusory formation can compare to it. If he could understand the mysteries of formation phenomena and upgrade the Celestial Wolf illusory formation to that level, Dewussely and his Celestial Wolf cavalry would explode in strength, becoming much stronger than ever before. For such an important matter, Wuxia would naturally take heavy precautions. Have none of you noticed that even though the battle is over, the Western Turkic soldiers have not relaxed in the slightest after Wuxia returned to the Western Turkic camp? On the contrary, they've become even more vigilant. Doluan Ruozan indifferently said. Everyone followed Doluan Ruozan's gaze. As expected, those soldiers of the Western Turkic Khaganate, which had been able to remain uninvolved in the fierce battle between Arabia and the Tang dynasty, had suddenly become jittery and vigilant upon Wuxia's return. At this moment, no one had any doubts. What a fine celestial wolf great general, we all underestimated him. Dusong Mengpoj couldn't help but sigh. Wuxia had truly hidden his abilities far too well. At this moment, he suddenly understood how the Tang dynasty's biting protector general in Sishun had lost to him. Wuxia was a powerful person, but he also did not act according to common sense. If one could not figure out his true intentions, how could one deal with him? If you understand his style and aren't moved by his words, you naturally won't be toyed around in the palm of his hand. Doluan Ruozan indifferently said. These simple words had revealed the crux of dealing with someone like Wuxia. Wuxia was a smart person, but alas, he was far from the only smart person on this battlefield. Doluan Ruozan knew that there were at least 3 people on the battlefield who could see through his intentions. Huishu Wizong and Dusong Mengpoj were not familiar with him and had rarely interacted with him. At the same time, they were not known for their intelligence, so it was normal for them to be tricked. But to Doluan Ruozan, this was truly not a very clever trick. Let's go. Wuxia has already succeeded in capturing an important person from the Tang dynasty. But that person over there isn't someone to be trifled with. If all goes as expected, he should have noticed by now. The Tang dynasty has just won a major victory and its morale is at its peak. Even Abu Muslim has retreated, so we should also suffer a little and temporarily avoid the brunt of his attacks. As long as that giant ape doesn't die, we can't fight with him. Doluan Ruozan chuckled and waved his hand, ordering the retreat. Rumble. Chapter 1006. This Doluan Ruozan is truly difficult to deal with. In the Western Turkic tent, Wuxia raised the curtain and walked out. As he glanced in the direction that Doluan Ruozan had left, Wuxia's eyes flashed with a strange light. The army retreated without even informing me. Is this some kind of small warning? A playful smile appeared in Wuxia's eyes. There were people who could see through his style and see through his true intentions, but very few people could be like Doluan Ruozan, able to see through everything with just a single glance. Pass on my order. The army is to retreat and follow the Uzan army to the east. Wuxia immediately ordered. But my lord, what about that person in the tent? A voice asked. Listening carefully, when this person spoke, one could hear bursts of moans coming from within the tent. Bring him along. This person is priceless now. If anything happens to him, we will have to pay for it. If something happens to him, I'll ask only you. Wuxia said. Yes. The person in the tent shivered and no longer dared to say another word. Rumble. Not long after the Uzan army had left, Wuxia led the remaining soldiers and the wolf pack into the distance. In front of Talas, Gao Xianji, Qing Qianli, Wang Chong, and Qing Qianli were all silent upon hearing Zhang Shouji's orders. Doluan Ruozan, Huishu Wizong, Dusong Mengpoj, and the tens of thousands of Uzan soldiers had not moved. Only Wuxia had come to take advantage of the chaos, but he had destroyed the most important and final giant ballista of the army. They had managed to hold off the entire skyquaking army, saving the giant ballista from their frenzied assault. But they had not been able to stop Wuxia's final attack. With thousands of parts flying through the air, there was not a single giant ballista left in Talas. Can it be repaired? Gao Xianji said subconsciously. This was his first reaction. The giant ballistae had been built from scratch under the leadership of Zhang Shouji. No one was more familiar with giant ballistae than him. If there was one person who could repair it, it would be him. Very difficult. Zhang Shouji shook his head and said with a solemn expression, "Wuxia is a top-class imperial great general, and his methods are different from others. A giant could destroy a giant ballista, let alone an imperial great general. I checked and found that more than 80% of the giant ballista's parts were destroyed, including some of the finest and most precious parts. Just collecting, forging, and inscribing these parts took us a very long time. All the materials are extremely precious, and there's only a very small chance that we can repair them." Gao Xianji instantly fell silent. The giant ballista had played the greatest role in this battle. If the giant ballista had been destroyed, it would have dealt a significant blow to them. After all, no one knew if the Arabs had any other inhuman powers. "It's fine. Leave this matter to me," Wang Chong indifferently said. Others might not know if the Arabian Empire had any other inhuman powers, but Wang Chong knew that the Behemoth Army and Skyquaking Army were their strongest forces. After suffering so many losses in such a short time, the Arabian Empire no longer had the strength to muster any more inhuman powers. "Senior Zhang, let's follow the old rules." After collecting the remaining parts of the two giant ballistae, they would be able to reassemble them into a new one. As for whether it can shoot arrows, that's not important. The most important thing is to raise the morale of the army. Moreover, we know that the giant ballistae are very difficult to reassemble, but the Arabs and Uzan don't know this. Putting a model there will at least have some effect on intimidating them. Wang Chong slapped the crossbow. The last behemoth on the battlefield of Talas was in his hands. To tell the truth, there really was no need to build a giant ballista that could deal with the behemoth so quickly. And even if it could, there was no need to do it so quickly. Understood. If that's the case, this old man will be able to make another one very quickly. Zhang Shouji nodded, understanding Wang Chong's meaning. In the last war, Wang Chong had used a bunch of fake Tang dynasty ballistae to deceive the Uzan. He was clearly using the same trick again. Rumble. While they were discussing, a cloud of dust suddenly rose up in the distance. On the high hills, an army rolled like the tide, retreating into the distance. "It's the Uzan!" Xue Qianjun exclaimed in delight and excitement, all the pressure he had accumulated over the last few days swept away. "The Arabs have retreated, and the Tibetans must have seen Abu Muslim retreat and decided to retreat as well," Wang Chong said. Rumble. As he spoke, the Western Turks began to retreat. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were filled with joy, and their expressions became much more relaxed. If the Western Turks and Uzan weren't threatening them, they would be in a much better situation. It's not that simple. Wang Chong shook his head, his brow slowly creasing as he gazed in the direction of the two armies. As he spoke, the four commanders, Wang Chong, Gao Xianji, Qing Qinli, and Wang Yan, stood up. Wang Chong is correct. This battle truly did have an effect on the Uzan and Western Turks, but whether it's the Celestial Wolf Great General Wuxia, Huishu Wuzang, or Daluan Ruozan, none of them are the kind of people who easily give up. Gao Xianji agreed. Although the retreat of the two armies had made things much easier for them, Gao Xianji was still deeply worried. Remember, if you haven't defeated the enemy, it can't be considered a true victory. You can't lower your guard in the slightest. Wang Chong slightly nodded. In this aspect, he shared the same opinion as Gao Xianji. As commanders of the Tang dynasty, the two of them had many things in common. All was quiet as the group watched the Uzan and Western Turks leave, none of them speaking. Only Wang Chong's eyes twitched as he watched the Western Turks leave, as if he was thinking about something. "Wang Chong, what's wrong?" Gao Xianji immediately sensed something and turned his head. "Something's wrong." Wang Chong's deep frown drew everyone's attention with his words. "Wang Chong, what's wrong? Did you notice something?" Qing Qianli asked. Although he hadn't known Wang Chong for long, Qing Qianli knew that this young Qixi Protector General would never speak without thinking. If he felt that something was wrong, something must have happened. I don't know. Wang Chong slowly drew back his gaze. This isn't my first time fighting with Daluan Ruozhen, and I have some understanding of his style. The battle is over and the Arabs have been defeated. For Daluan Ruozhen to choose to retreat, temporarily avoid the brunt of the attack, reorganize his army, and bide his time is completely consistent with his usual style. But that celestial wolf great general. I feel that something's wrong. Dewusili. Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli glanced at each other in surprise. Neither of them had expected Wang Chong's focus to be on the celestial wolf great general Dewusili. Lord Protector General, you have more seniority than I do. Have you ever interacted with this Dewusili before? Do you understand him? This. I and Dewusili belong to different war zones, and the two of us haven't had many direct interactions, so I haven't paid much attention to him. Gao Xianji frowned, a look of recollection on his face. But based on what I know, the outside world says that Dewusili is a very difficult person to deal with. Back then, he was only able to sit in a position of Qi Jin because he had killed the previous Qi Jin through iron-blooded means. That person was also very famous among the Western Turks. Wang Chong's brow furrowed even more, the strange feeling in his heart intensifying. All was quiet as everyone stared at Wang Chong. No one dared to disturb him at a time like this. As for Gao Xianji, Qing Qianli, and Wang Yan, Wang Chong, all of them had thoughtful expressions on their faces. But this was just a simple retreat. Unlike Wang Chong, they found it very difficult to sense anything from it. Senior Zhang Shouji, I'll have to trouble you to repeat what you just said. Wang Chong's gaze swept over Zhang Shouji as he spoke. Zhang Shouji was confused, but he did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly repeated what he had said before. When Zhang Shouji repeated what he had said a second time, everyone perked up their ears, but not even Gao Xianji or Qing Qianli understood. What did Dewusili's destruction of the giant ballista have to do with the strange feeling that Wang Chong had spoken of? It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was confused, but Wang Chong's eyes slowly began to sharpen. Something's wrong. There's something strange about Dewusili. Wang Chong firmly said. Wang Chong, what did you discover? Is there something wrong with Dewusili destroying the giant ballista? Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli hurriedly said. It's not the giant ballista, but Dewusili. Lord Protector General, General Cheng, let me ask you, what do you think Dewusili's goal is in crossing the second defense line alone? Of course, it's to deal with, Qing Qianli immediately said. But just when he was about to say, Wang Chong, he suddenly thought of something and froze, unable to speak. Have you noticed? Wang Chong gave Qing Qianli a profound glance, knowing that he had understood. On the surface, Dewusili seems to be coming for us, but from start to finish, we've never met him. There's definitely something strange about this Dewusili. His goal isn't us, but something else. Wang Chong's thoughts were getting clearer and clearer, and his eyes were getting sharper and sharper. On the side, Gao Xianji had the same concern in his eyes as Wang Chong. If Dewusili was coming for them, it would be fine, but if he wasn't, it would truly be troublesome. Even more dangerous was that the battle was over. No matter what Dewusili's goal was, he had probably succeeded by now. Xue Qianjun. Pass on my order. Gather the army. I want you to investigate it again. Especially the ballista army and the Wuxian cavalry. Don't miss a single detail. Chapter 1007. In the distance, the Western Turks had long ago vanished, and Xue Qianjuan's investigation quickly came to a conclusion. Marquis, it's bad. Lord Chen Bin has disappeared. We've searched the entire camp, but we can't find him. What? Wang Chong grimaced, and even Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli turned to look, their expressions completely different from before. Although they didn't know much about Wang Chang's subordinates, they had at least heard of Chen Bin's name. He was Wang Chang's ballista commander, and he was extremely skilled in commanding ballistae. Ballistae were all in his hands, but in the hands of others, they were completely different. In Wang Chang's army, Chen Bin held an extremely important position. Although he had not charged into battle like the others, he had probably killed a considerable number of Arabs, Tibetans, and Western Turks in this battle. He was the one who had truly contributed to the victory, an extremely important figure. Without him, the Tang dynasty and all of Talas would have a massive effect. Search for me one more time. What about the inside of Talas? Have you searched the city? Also, call the ballista soldiers over. And Chen Bin's personal guard, do not even they know where Chen Bin went? At the end, Wang Chang's voice hardened. Yes. A nervous look appeared on the messenger's face. Marquis was rarely this stern, but everyone knew that Chen Bin's disappearance was no small matter. The messenger quickly left, and the army began to get busy with Wang Chang's orders. Gao Xianji, Qing Qianli, and the other generals were also anxiously waiting. The investigation quickly came to a conclusion, but none of them wanted to hear this news. It had been confirmed that Wuxia had taken a person with him in his retreat, and this person was Chen Bin. Because Chen Bin had been injured while dealing with the skyquaking giants, he had been lying on the ground with the other wounded soldiers and corpses. Thus, Wuxia's departure had not attracted much attention. Many of the wounded had been moved into Talas and other heavily guarded areas. The ballista soldiers believed that Chen Bin had been taken away, and coupled with the chaos of the battle, none of them had the time to pay attention to anything else. No one had noticed that Chen Bin had been taken away. This news was like a heavy bomb that fiercely exploded in everyone's hearts. For a moment, the atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Even Zhang Shouji, who was standing to the side, revealed a solemn expression. I don't understand. Wuxia is known as the Celestial Wolf Great General, one of the 3 strongest great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Why did he take Chen Bin? Shi Yuanqing, the 3rd in command of the Anxi Protectorate Army next to Qing Qianli, interjected. He had rushed over after receiving the news. His deepest impression of Chen Bin was still the efficient and callous way in which he had commanded the ballista army to reap the Arabs' wrongs. Although his martial arts were not high, the ability he displayed was something that many generals with higher strength than him could only look up to. But he still didn't understand why the mighty Celestial Wolf Great General had taken him away. Could it be that Wuxia wants to obtain the secrets of the ballista from Chen Bin and build a ballista army? Shi Yuanqing said. Impossible. Before Shi Yuanqing could finish, Zhang Shouji interrupted him. Ballistae have always been the greatest secret of the Tang dynasty. If you want to build a ballista, you need a blueprint. You can't build one just by looking at its outer appearance. It's just a large ballista, and the craftsmen are responsible for the craftsmen while the soldiers are responsible for the battlefield. Although Chen Bin is the commander of the ballista army, he doesn't have the blueprint. It's simply impossible for Wuxia to obtain the secrets of the ballista from him. Moreover, the forging of a ballista requires a very high level of skill and a complete forging system. This isn't something that a steppe empire like the Western Turks can achieve. Even if they have the ballista blueprint, they'll be useless. They won't be able to forge a single ballista. Zhang Shouji's expression was resolute. In the field of forging, Zhang Shouji held absolute authority. Whether it was the construction of the city of steel or the appearance of the giant ballista, Zhang Shouji's status in the world was as high as the noon sun, and he was fully deserving of the title of Grandmaster. In particular, Zhang Shouji had supervised the construction of the city of steel, and that magnificent masterpiece had raised Zhang Shouji's status to the extreme, making him a god in the eyes of many craftsmen. If he said that the Western Turkic Khaganate couldn't forge a ballista even if they had the blueprint, then this would definitely be the case. But is it possible that the Western Turkic Khaganate is working with the Arabs to build a ballista? Another officer of the Anshi Protectorate Army asked. The Western Turks, Uzan, and Arabia were currently in a three-way alliance. What everyone was worried about the most was that the Western Turks and Arabs were working together, which would be very bad. The Western Turkic Khaganate truly couldn't forge a ballista, as they lacked the skill to do so, but the Arabs were different. If they had the blueprint, they would definitely be able to forge one. Impossible. This time, before Zhang Shouji could answer, Gao Xianji shook his head and rejected the idea. The Arabs are extremely proud. They only truly clashed with us and came into contact with Ballisti a month or two ago, and at that time, the Arabs had not yet formed an alliance with the Western Turks. In addition, the three-way alliance has only just been formed, and each side has its own ulterior motives. In the current situation, the alliance is far from deep enough to work together to forge a ballista. Moreover, given Abu Muslim's style of doing things, he probably wants to see Dawusali lead an army to attack us together with the Arabs, not a trifling ballista blueprint. Thus, this situation is impossible. At the very least, Dawusali's actions have nothing to do with Abu Muslim. But if the Western Turkic Khaganate can't forge a ballista and Dawusali has no intention of working with the Arabs, then why did he kidnap Chen Bin? Xue Qianjun muttered to himself. His words caused everyone to fall silent. Chen Bin was the commander of the ballista army. If Dawusali wasn't here for the ballisti, what else could he be here for? No one could think of an answer to this question. There's no need to think about it. If Dawusali isn't here for the ballisti, then there's only one thing left, the Wuxian cavalry. As everyone looked on, Wang Chong said the last four words. In all of Talas, the Tang dynasty's strongest forces were the ballista army and the Wuxian cavalry, armed to the teeth. If it wasn't the ballista army, then the rest was obvious. But, Wang Chong, isn't Chen Bin the commander of the ballista army? If Dawusali wants to move against the Wuxian cavalry, why would he kidnap him? Gao Xianji slightly creased his brow in confusion. The mighty celestial wolf great general, who had dominated the steppe and the borders, would never make such a low-level mistake. At this moment, even Gao Xianji was somewhat confused. Moreover, if Dawusali wanted to move against the Wuxian cavalry, he could have done so directly. Even if he coveted the meteoric metal armor and Wuxia steel swords of the Wuxian cavalry, there was no need to kidnap a person. The Wuxian cavalry were unimaginably powerful, and as the commander of the army, Gao Xianji could not have failed to notice them. Moreover, Wang Chong had never intended to conceal the secret of the meteoric metal and Wuxia steel swords from him. I'm afraid that the problem lies with the armor. An almost imperceptible bitter smile appeared on Wang Chong's lips. All the commanders under my command are equipped with meteoric metal armor and Wuxia steel swords, and the commanders in particular are even better equipped. Dawusali isn't familiar with the composition of my army, so he must have only noticed the special armor of the Wuxian cavalry and not the other parts. Thus, he took Chen Bin to be a member of the Wuxian cavalry. As for Dawusali's goal in kidnapping him, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably for formation phenomena. Buzz. In the beginning, everyone was still astonished, but when they heard the words formation phenomena, their expressions changed abruptly as they came to a sudden understanding. It was especially so for Gao Xianji and Qing Qinli. Their horizons and knowledge far surpassed that of ordinary people, so they naturally understood the weight of the words formation phenomena. In a flash, Gao Xianji's heart sank. For a supreme commander like Gao Xianji, Wang Chong only needed to say a part of it for Gao Xianji to understand. This matter is a little bad. Formation phenomena is no small matter. In truth, even if you hadn't brought it up after this battle, I would have asked about it. It's no wonder that Dawusali has taken a liking to your formation phenomena. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry have dominated the world and are one of the three strongest cavalry forces of the Western Turkic Khaganate. If he were to obtain the secret of formation phenomena and raise the celestial wolf illusory formation to the highest level, he would become a major foe of our Tang dynasty, both now and in the future. In addition, I don't know much about your subordinates, but there is one thing I would like to ask. Chen Bin is the commander of the ballista army. Does he know about the formation phenomena of the Wuxian cavalry? Gao Xianji sternly said. He knows. Wang Chong nodded. Before I established the ballista army, he was actually one of the commanders of the Wuxian cavalry. He doesn't say that he knows all the secrets, but he knows at least 80%. Wang Chong, the Western Turks are an empire of cavalry, and they use even more formations than we do. If Wuxia obtains the secret of formation phenomena and begins to spread it throughout the Western Turkic Khaganate, you should understand what that means. So allow me to ask you one more question. Given your understanding of Chen Bin, if Wuxia wants to know the secret of formation phenomena, will he succeed? Gao Xianji spoke very tactfully, but his expression grew more and more solemn. Wuxia's schemes were no small matter. As one of the most elite great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate and one of the most exalted Urkins, he was not just plotting to raise the strength of the celestial wolf cavalry. The gravity of this matter had already surpassed the level of Chen Bin's capture and the threat to the ballista army. It was now a strategic contest between the Tang dynasty and the Western Turkic Khaganate. Ha! Wang Chong gave a long sigh and slowly raised his head toward the east. What I'm worried about right now is not that Wuxia might obtain the secret of formation phenomena, but that he won't be able to. Chapter 1008. The 1000th chapter. Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli were dazed for a moment, but they quickly understood and fell silent, the mood somewhat oppressive. Chen Bin had been at Wang Chong's side for a very long time. In the southwest, he had gone through life and death with Wang Chong, making illustrious achievements on the battlefield. Later on, during the construction of the City of Steel, the clash with Dusong Mangpoj on the Yuzhen Plateau, and now, during the Battle of Talas, Chen Bin had done his utmost to assist Wang Chong, and he had done his utmost to make the most of it. Wang Chong was not worried that Chen Bin would leak the secret. Given Chen Bin's personality, he would never do such a thing. But if Chen Bin vowed to keep his mouth shut, given Wuxia's style, he might very well be killed. Marquis, what should we do now? Xue Qianjun asked. These words were exactly what everyone was thinking. Chen Bin had a very good relationship with the soldiers. He would often lead them on the battlefield, and after the battle, they would all eat and drink together. They were all very good brothers. Now that Chen Bin had been captured, one could easily imagine what they were feeling. Someone. Prepare a brush, ink, and paper for me. I want to write a letter to Wuxia. I will personally handle this matter. Wang Chong looked to the east, his eyes exuding a cold light. Time slowly passed, and as the battle came to an end, the sun began to set and the world began to darken. 60 li from the city of Talas, countless wolves were roaming the land. Behind the wolves was a massive banner of a golden wolf on a blue background, and behind this banner were countless tents. This was where the Turkic army led by Wuxia had set up camp. With the war essentially over, the Turkic army should have been able to relax, but reality was the complete opposite. The camp was heavily guarded, and the air was fraught with tension. How is it? In the centermost white tent, Wuxia turned his head and looked at the witch doctor beside him. My lord, his injuries are very serious. Before you captured him, he had already been seriously injured. With his physical condition, it would be very difficult for him to endure such an interrogation, not to mention extorting a confession. The emaciated Turkic shaman, dressed in a black robe and exuding a strong medicinal aroma, said. He turned his head to look at Chen Bin, who was lying on the sheepskin couch. His eyes were filled with deep worry. This Tang people's body was stained with blood and his clothes were torn. It seemed that he was badly injured. However, the situation inside his body was much more serious than outside. More than 40% of the bones in his body were broken, his meridians were in disorder, and his internal organs were displaced. Any one of these injuries could take his life. Moreover, so many injuries were concentrated on one person. You don't have to waste your efforts. Cough cough, no matter what you want to know, I won't tell you. Chen Bin raised half of his body from the sheepskin couch with great difficulty, a scornful smile on his face. But he had only said a few words when he began to violently cough. As he coughed, streams of blood flew out of his mouth and dripped onto his pale face, creating a ghastly sight. You've lost too much blood. If you continue to get so agitated, you'll die. The emaciated Turkic shaman slowly walked over and spoke in an extremely indifferent tone. War was a matter for warriors. To the shaman, he only saw the sick and the non-sick. The shaman had no qualms about this Han, treating him like an ordinary person. So what if I die? If I were afraid of death, how could I step onto the battlefield? Dewusili, you don't have to waste your efforts. I won't tell you any secrets about the formation phenomena. Just hurry up and kill me. Chen Bin faintly smiled, his expression exuding the bearing of someone who had placed his life on the line. Even the shaman couldn't help but admire this bearing. Humph, you want to die? It won't be that easy. Before I get what I want, it'll be hard for you to die even if you want to. Dewusili's eyes chilled as he strode forward and grabbed Chen Bin's numb right hand. Boom! In a flash of golden light, a majestic energy brimming with boundless vitality surged into Chen Bin's body. Ah! Chen Bin let out a loud roar as he straightened his back. The enormous life force flowed through his 7 meridians and 8 meridians and poured into his entire body. Under the effect of this energy, the wounds on Chen Bin's body began to heal with astonishing speed. At some point, a surging golden light had become almost tangible, enveloping the entire tent like a tide. When I, Dewusili, want to save a person, no one can stop me from doing what I want to do. You'd better obediently tell me the secret of the formation phenomena. Dewusili's voice thundered through the tent. After a long, long time, as night fell, Dewusili finally walked out of the tent. His face was slightly pale, but his expression was one of extreme joy. Consuming so much energy for the sake of a single Tang people would have been extremely wasteful, but Dewusili believed it to be extremely worth it. In his eyes, this was no longer a single Tang people. In him, Dewusili saw limitless possibilities for the Western Turkic Khaganate. If he could obtain the secret of formation phenomena from the Tang people and then spread it throughout the Western Turkic Khaganate, the Western Turkic Khaganate might become an existence even stronger than the Arabs. After all, while the Arabs had unparalleled warhorses, the Western Turkic Khaganate had far more warhorses than they did. A trifling talas is no longer important. As long as I can obtain that thing, I will become the war god of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Even one step further, replacing it is entirely possible. Dewusili's mind thought of that taboo word, but he did not say it. Until he truly succeeded, Dewusili did not want to reveal the slightest clue. As the winds howled past him, Dewusili suddenly felt much more relaxed as he gazed at the darkening sky and the stars dotting the sky. Reporting. At this moment, he heard a voice. Dewusili's brow furrowed as he subconsciously turned his head and saw a Western Turkic messenger hurrying toward him. What's all the fuss about? Dewusili unhappily said with a wave of his sleeve. Reporting. Great General, a Tang dynasty scout has arrived. Our men went to intercept him, but then they discovered that he had fired an arrow at our gate. This was tied to the arrow. As the messenger spoke, he hurried forward, knelt on one knee, and handed over the arrow and the letter on it with both hands. What? Dewusili's eyebrows rose as he lightly flicked the arrow with his right index finger. The messenger felt his hands loosen as the arrow and letter flew into Dewusili's hands. The great general's seal. Dewusili's pupils constricted and his face paled when he saw the words on the back of the letter. This was not the first time Dewusili had interacted with the Tang dynasty, and the one he had fought with the most was biting Protector General in Sishun. Wuxia was no stranger to this seal. Only the great generals of the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains could use this seal. In the entire Talas region, only Wang Chong or Gao Xianji could use this seal. They came so quickly. Wuxia's mind reeled in shock. He had believed that he would have at least a few more hours after capturing Chen Bin, but he hadn't expected them to arrive so quickly. These fellows are truly difficult to deal with. A hint of apprehension flashed through Wuxia's eyes as he quickly opened the letter. Night had fallen, but the city of Talas was still brightly illuminated. Wang Chong, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Xue Qianjun, and the generals of the Qixi Protectorate were all present. Although Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli of the Anxi Protectorate army had chosen to stay away, they had still sent the third-ranked officer of the Anxi Protectorate army, Shi Yuanqing, to listen. Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli were in a very awkward position. Chen Bin's capture had everything to do with the formation phenomena. They couldn't agree or disagree, but the fact that they had sent Shi Yuanqing, whose status was second only to Qing Qianli, was enough to show just how concerned Gao Xianji and the others were. "How is it? Is there any news?" As the travel-worn scout entered the hall, Li Sai, Kong Xian, Huang Batian, Sun Jiming, and the others all stood up. Although Wang Chong did not stand, the urgency in his eyes was enough to show that he was no less concerned about this matter than anyone else present. "Marquis." The messenger paid no attention to the others, walking straight up to Wang Chong and getting down on one knee. "The letter has been successfully delivered. I personally shot the letter into the Turkic camp and watched as they took it away. But even after waiting outside for a long time, I still haven't received a reply." "What?" The scout's words made everyone's hearts clench. "Are you sure that the letter was delivered? Is it possible that they didn't even notice the letter on the arrow? How long did you wait there? Is it possible that Wuxia was in the middle of replying to the letter and you just happened to miss it when you returned?" Everyone began to speak, their expressions filled with worry. "Impossible." The scout shook his head and respectfully said, "I personally saw them pull out the arrow from the gate and remove the letter. I saw them pull out the arrow from the gate with my own eyes. They took down the letter on it, and someone ran all the way to the commander's camp." "Enough." Seeing that everyone in the hall still wanted to ask more questions, Wang Chong finally spoke up to interrupt them. The hall fell silent as everyone turned to Wang Chong. "I know that all of you are very concerned about Chen Bin's safety, but I hope that all of you can calm down. Since the scout has definitely delivered the letter must have arrived. The scouts of the Tang dynasty don't even fear death, so how could they not even deliver a letter?" As he spoke, Wang Chong's eyes turned sharp and fierce as they swept over the people in the hall. In an instant, everyone could not help but lower their heads in shame. The scout also gave a long sigh as he gazed at Wang Chong with gratitude. The scouts of the Tang dynasty were undoubtedly the best in the world, whether it was in strength, experience, loyalty, or sense of duty. All of them knew this. But just as Wang Chong had said, their concern for Chen Bin's safety had caused them to lose their composure. "Let me ask you, what did you see in the Western Turkic camp? Tell me everything, no matter how big or small." Chapter 1009. "Yes, Marquis." The scout did not conceal anything, recounting everything he had seen in the Western Turkic camp. As he spoke, the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Wang Chong never spoke without thinking, so no one dared to disturb him. "Let me ask you again. What was the reaction of the Western Turks before you delivered the letter, and what was their reaction after you delivered the letter?" Wang Chong asked. "This. When I first appeared, the entire Turkic camp seemed extremely vigilant. When I appeared on the perimeter of their camp, people immediately came out to stop me. This was no different from when we spied on the camps of other factions. But after I delivered the letter, around 2 hours later, a large number of cavalry suddenly charged out of the Turkic camp and began to drive me away. Their attitude was completely different from before. Wang Chang's eyebrows rose at this point, but he said nothing. I understand. You are dismissed. Yes, Marquis. The scout quickly withdrew, leaving the room even quieter than before. All eyes were on Wang Chong, brimming with anticipation. Marquis, have you discovered anything? Xue Qianjun cautiously asked. We can now confirm that Chen Bin is still alive and in the Western Turkic camp. Wang Chang's gaze swept over the crowd as he finally said the words they had all been waiting to hear. Whoosh! In an instant, a long sigh could be heard in the hall. Everyone's hearts, which had been hanging high in the air, finally calmed down at this moment. They felt much more relaxed. Wonderful. Chen Bin is fine. This is the greatest fortune amidst the misfortune. All we need to do now is think of a way to save Chen Bin. Marquis, what do you think we should do? The crowd looked at Wang Chong in high spirits. Although no one knew how Wang Chong had determined that Chen Bin was alive and well, none of them doubted Wang Chong's judgment. Sit down. Wang Chong spread his arms and gestured to everyone. Even though he had confirmed that Chen Bin was still alive, Wang Chong was not as relaxed as everyone thought he was. This matter is far from that simple. Although Chen Bin is still alive, De Wusseli has made it clear that he doesn't want to negotiate with us. If I'm not mistaken, he's still trying to buy time, hoping to get an answer from Chen Bin. I'm afraid Chen Bin is going to suffer now. After saying this, Wang Chong could not help but reveal a trace of worry in his eyes. In the main hall, everyone's faces were filled with joy, but when they heard those words, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them, and their hearts sank. Those who fought on the battlefield were all extremely ruthless. The armies of the various factions also had their own methods of torturing and interrogating prisoners to obtain information. If De Wusseli wanted to obtain the secret of formation phenomena, he would undoubtedly be torturing Chen Bin. The thought of this made everyone's hearts clench. Marquis, Lord Protector General said that if necessary, we can send people to work with Marquis to infiltrate the Turkic camp and rescue Chen Bin. At this moment, Shi Yuanqing, who had been silently observing the proceedings, suddenly spoke up, walking forward. As long as we use the right method, we have a chance of success. In short, no matter what, we can't let the secret of formation phenomena fall into the hands of the Western Turks. Marquis, let me go. I'll lead the Wuxian cavalry, and we should be able to rescue Chen Bin. Li Sai, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. His voice was loud and clear, like a great bell. Marquis, me too. Me too. The others also began to volunteer at Li Sai's words. There's no need. Wang Chong shook his head, rejecting their suggestions. As he spoke, he turned to Shi Yuanqing. General Shi, I appreciate your good intentions, but this matter should be discussed in the long run. De Wusseli is no weakling. Since he has schemed for so long, he must have made thorough preparations. Moreover, we still don't know what's going on with Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoch. If we rashly send soldiers over, we might fall into their trap and end up making a fool of ourselves. Marquis, I know that you care for your subordinates and don't want to sacrifice more people, but if De Wusseli asks for the secret of formation phenomena, the consequences will be far greater than the 10 some of us can make up for. Shi Yuanqing solemnly said. Righteousness does not control wealth, benevolence does not command soldiers. There were times when a commander had to make some sacrifices. Haha, General Shi, you misunderstand. To his surprise, Wang Chong chuckled at Shi Yuanqing's words. Chen Bin must be saved, but not in this manner. I've already arranged everything. Chen Bin's side will definitely not leak the secret. And the more De Wusseli can't get what he wants, the more he won't let him die. But if we take action, sneak in and forcefully rescue him, De Wusseli might be forced to do something that might endanger Chen Bin's safety. That would be the exact opposite of what we want. Ah! Even Shi Yuanqing was dumbfounded by Wang Chang's words. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Relax. It won't be long before de Wussili comes looking for me if he can't get what he wants. Wang Chong lightly tapped the table with the index and middle fingers of his right hand. After sending off Shi Yuanqing, the only people left in the room were the Qixi Protectorate, and Wang Chong's expression instantly turned gloomy. In front of Shi Yuanqing, Wang Chong appeared confident, but only he knew just how anxious he was. Li Sai, get ready. We can't wait for Chen Bin. Gather all the Wuxian cavalry and follow me to see de Wussili. Wang Chong suddenly said, raising his head. Yes, Marquis. Li Sai was at first dazed, but he quickly lowered his head and respectfully replied. Rumble. A few moments later, Wang Chang's army gathered and led the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry toward the western Turkic camp 60 li away. Wang Chang's judgment had been correct. Chen Bin truly was in a bad situation. Although de Wussili would not kill him for the sake of the formation phenomena, as long as he did not die, de Wussili did not mind using a few cruel methods. Bastard! Several hours later, de Wussili finally emerged from the tent, cursing and swearing as he flung the blood off his fists. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? If you don't speak, I'll just kill you and capture someone else. I'll still be able to get the secret of formation phenomena out of you. De Wussili's eyes burned with rage. As one of the Western Turkic great generals, there were few enemies that de Wussili could not deal with. Even Sis Hun had been defeated by him, let alone anyone else. But this Tang people called Chen Bin, despite using all the torture methods he could muster, had still not been able to make him talk or pry out the secret he wanted. This infuriated de Wussili, and he felt a deep sense of defeat. He was just a nameless soldier. De Wussili truly could not understand how someone could be so stubborn that he would rather endure torture than speak his secret. Think of a way to treat him. Not a single wound can be left on him. At daybreak, I need him unharmed so that I can continue my interrogation. De Wussili called over the emaciated shaman doctor and said, suppressing his anger. Yes, milord. The witch doctor indifferently replied, neither nodding or shaking his head as he silently walked back into the tent. Haha, de Wussili, come. No matter how many times you torture me, if I say a single word, I'm not fit to be a Han, much less a subordinate of Marquis. Let me tell you, if you want to obtain the secret of formation phenomena, you're delusional. As de Wussili was walking out, he heard a burst of laughter from the tent, one brimming with derision and a will to die. Bastard! De Wussili's gaze was vicious as he clenched his fists tightly. A thick killing intent flashed across his eyes, but de Wussili held it in. Blue veins popped out on his iron fists. After a long time, he finally loosened them. I'll kill you after some time. With that thought in mind, de Wussili quickly left. Great General, bad news. Just as de Wussili was about to leave, a warhorse suddenly galloped over, kicking up a cloud of dust. Before the warhorse could even land, the rider immediately jumped off, panting. He quickly strode forward and knelt in front of de Wussili. Scouts from the front have reported that a large number of enemy troops are heading in our direction at high speed. There are at least 5,000 of them, and they look very much like the Wuxian cavalry of the Tang dynasty. Scouts are currently scouting the front line, and General Hu Langyi has come to report. Great General, please make a decision. What? De Wussili instantly paled at these words. De Wussili had not expected Wang Chong to respond so quickly, and now he was leading an army right after the letter had arrived. And for a single subordinate to make such a big fuss over such a small army? Pass on my order. Gather the army and stand guard. In addition, gather the Celestial Wolf Cavalry. Everyone, follow me. De Wussili harshly said. In a flash, the Western Turkic camp became solemn, all of them acting as if they were facing a powerful foe. The Wuxian Cavalry. 2 days ago, none of them had heard of this name, but now, there was not a single person who did not know of this formidable force. Even the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the Mutri Great Cavalry of the Uzan had been defeated by them, so one could easily imagine their strength. Although no one spoke of it in private, everyone had long ago come to the conclusion that the Tang Dynasty cavalry were the strongest force in the continent. Whoosh! Chapter 10:10. At this moment, all the Celestial Wolf Cavalry in Turkic Cavalry, including Dewusili, were looking in the same direction. The darkness was quiet as if nothing had happened, but an air of unease pervaded the air. Everyone knew that in that direction, at the limits of their vision, the illustrious and dreadful Tang Dynasty cavalry were galloping toward them. Rumble. A faint tremor could be heard in the distance, and then it grew stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye, a tsunami of tremors had arrived. Even the ground beneath Dewusili's feet began to hum and tremble. "They're here!" A Western Turkic general suddenly called out. There was no need for him to say anything more. On the horizon in the direction of the city of Talas, a black flood of steel was galloping toward them. At the very front of this army was a massive dragon banner of the Tang dynasty, an awe-inspiring sight to behold. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains. This was not the first time the Western Turks had heard of this name, nor was it the first time they had fought it. Before today, they had viewed this name with some disdain. But after witnessing the Tang dynasty's reversal in the Battle of Talas and sweeping away Abu Muslim and the Arab army, all of them felt a deep apprehension and shock. In everyone's hearts, these 4 words had a completely different weight compared to before. Shamshak, Chechen Benba, hear my order. Prepare for battle. Dewusili suddenly said as he looked into the distance. Yes, my lord. The 2 of them bowed and replied. Shamshak's eyes were bursting with an intense desire to fight. My lord, be at ease. This general will do his utmost. Shamshak said. Shamshak had lost all faith in his battle with the Wuxian cavalry. Although the matter was over, Shamshak still felt an extraordinary humiliation, and he was constantly thinking about how to wipe away this disgrace. Time passed slowly, and the atmosphere became more and more solemn. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Wang Chong and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry approached at an astonishing speed. 8,000 zhang, 6,000 zhang, 4,000 zhang, 2,000 zhang. Wang Chong finally stopped. The 2 armies stared at each other from a distance, the air extremely tense. In the Turkic camp, countless green wolves bared their teeth and assumed offensive stances. But the Western Turkic elites were even more nervous. All of them were focused, their bodies tense, and even their hands that tightly gripped their weapons were drenched in cold sweat. After seeing the Tang dynasty sweep through the Arabs with ease, all of them felt a deep fear of the Tang people of Talas. In contrast, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry led by Wang Chong appeared much calmer. Great General, have you considered my proposal? Still 10,000 some zhang away, Wang Chong rode forward on his white-hoofed shadow and got straight to the point. His sharp voice cut through the darkness like a sharp blade, shattering the silence between the 2 armies. Humph! Dewusili angrily glared at the distant Wang Chong and raised his halberd as he rode forward. Brat! I have no idea what you're talking about, but I do know one thing. For you to dare to personally come to my door, you truly don't know the meaning of death. You managed to escape last time, but this time, I'd like to see just who will come to your rescue. As he spoke, Dewusili's eyes exploded with killing intent. Wang Chong wasn't strong enough, but he was full of schemes and schemes. His god King Yama was only at the early great general level, but it was actually able to block the attack of a peak great general. If word of this got out, he would lose all face. Although he was going for the formation phenomena, Dewusili didn't mind killing Wang Chong. Ha ha ha, when he heard Dewusili's words, Wang Chong grinned. Not only was he not afraid, he even took a few steps forward. Since that's the case, why don't you give it a try, great general? Impudence. De Wusseli's pupils constricted as he flew into a rage. Boom! There was a flash of light, and just when everyone was still immersed in the pleasantries between the two commanders, subconsciously thinking that the two would not fight, there was an earth-shattering boom as de Wusseli suddenly became one with his horse, instantly using the celestial wolf's divine procession. With an earth-shattering boom, he suddenly transformed into a black rainbow that collided with Wang Chong. The power of this attack was extremely terrifying. Where de Wusseli sat on his horse, the black halberd sliced through the air like water, and the enormous power even caused the air within a radius of several dozen zhang to distort, as if it was connected to the abyss of hell appeared. And even more shocking was that because the destructive power contained in the halberd was too terrifying, everywhere de Wusseli passed, the earth seemed to be plowed apart by an invisible iron plow. Countless rocks and soil fragments shot in all directions, leaving deep dents in the ground. Great General! This halberd attack was so sudden that even Shamshak and Chekan Benba, who were in the rear, jumped in fright. By the time they reacted, de Wusseli had already charged in front of the Tang people's army, and that earth-shattering attack was already smashing towards Wang Chong. Marquis. Not good. The Wuxian cavalry behind Wang Chong were also stunned. No one had expected de Wusseli to use this sort of method to launch an attack. But at this moment, the least surprised was Wang Chong. Wang Chong faintly smiled as he swiftly attacked. Boom! The earth quaked and winds howled as Wang Chong activated the God King Yama formation and slammed it against de Wusseli. In a flash, the entire world seemed to have been torn asunder, the massive boom causing the tens of thousands of Western Turks and Wuxian cavalry to cover their ears and retreat. A fierce sandstorm swept through the world, and with a cold snort, Wang Chong's God King Yama firmly stood his ground. As for de Wusseli, he slid back some distance, but he quickly steadied himself in the air. Silence. The entire battlefield was eerily still. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Everything had happened too quickly, and before anyone could react, the battle was over. Once one reached the level of Wang Chong and de Wusseli, many warriors could only look up to them. As for the specifics, no one except Wang Chong and de Wusseli knew. This foul brat. De Wusseli, seated on his black steed, floated in the air, a vicious killing intent in his eyes. He appeared calm on the surface, but his mind was in turmoil. Only he knew what had just happened. There was no doubt that de Wusseli was one of the strongest imperial great generals in the world. Although he was still lacking compared to the governor of Iron and Blood, there was no question that he was far superior to Wang Chong. But de Wusseli's full-strength attack had been forcibly blocked by Wang Chong, and he had done it without using any technique. It was the same God King Yama, but in just a single day, the difference in power was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Just what happened? How did this brat get so strong in such a short time? De Wusseli's knuckles cracked, not daring to believe it. In that attack just now, he had used the celestial wolf's divine procession, allowing his body to float in the air. Unlike Wang Chong, he had been at a disadvantage. But there was no doubt that Wang Chong's strength had increased so much that he could stand on equal footing with him. To de Wusseli, this was unacceptable. He could not accept being on equal footing with a nobody of the younger generation. How about it? De Wusseli, do you want to do it again? While de Wusseli was feeling apprehensive, Wang Chong spoke. His expression was carefree and natural, showing no fear even in the face of a top-class imperial great general like de Wusseli. After absorbing all the energy of Garib Hassam, Wang Chong's strength had soared to an astonishing level. He had truly reached the brigadier general level and was only a thin line away from the great general level. With Wang Chong's current strength, one could easily imagine the power of the God King Yama formation. Bastard thing, do you really think that I can't kill you? De Wusseli swung his black halberd horizontally, and a powerful killing intent surged out of him like a tide, twisting the space in a radius of several dozen zhang. From a distance, it was a sight to behold. De Wuxia, I know that you kidnapped my people, so hand them over. If he loses a single hair, you know what I'll do. Wang Chong pretended not to hear. He looked at De Wuxia and spoke in a flat tone, but his voice was suffused with a thick threat. In any negotiation, strength was the most fundamental cornerstone. At the start, Wang Chong did not have the right to negotiate in De Wuxia's eyes. But after this clash, Wang Chong had amply displayed his strength, giving him the right to negotiate with De Wuxia on equal footing. In the howling winds, both the Western Turks and the Wuxian cavalry were looking at their commander. All of them understood that whether this was war or peace depended entirely on this conversation. Even though this moment was calm and tranquil, the next moment could be an extremely bitter battle. The atmosphere was tense. Watch my gesture. If the situation looks bad, Milord will give us a signal to attack. Shamshak suddenly whispered. Chechen Benba also nodded, both of them staring at De Wuxia's right palm. After following De Wuxia for so long, the two of them had come to understand that De Wuxia had some special habits. He would never give an obvious order to attack, but would make a special gesture before the attack. When the Celestial Wolf cavalry attacked, they would definitely catch the enemy off guard. Chapter 10-11. He. After some time, De Wuxia suddenly chuckled, his voice tinged with a sinister and ruthless tone. Brat, you're too arrogant. Yes, the person you want is in my hands, but what makes you think that I'll hand him over to you? You've only brought 5,000 soldiers with you, and yet you want someone from my hands? Aren't you being a little too simple? Aren't you afraid that I'll join forces with the Yuzhen to kill you and your Wuxian cavalry? With these last words, De Wuxia's surging killing intent swelled to a whole new level. This almost tangible killing intent engulfed the air, and even the surrounding temperature dropped. Not only did Wang Chong show no fear at De Wuxia's words, he even began to laugh. If it really was as you say, Daluan Ruozhen, Huishu Wazang, and Dusong Mangpoj would have come out long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. If my guess is correct, your scheme for formation phenomena behind their backs has already caused a crack in your alliance. Otherwise, why would you have set up camp here alone with your army? Buzz. These words made De Wuxia feel like he had been stabbed by a needle, his entire body fiercely trembling. Although Wang Chong had only said these words casually, they had struck at the crux of the matter. For his own selfishness, De Wuxia had hidden his true goal and gone alone to the battlefield to plot formation phenomena. This matter had been exposed, and Daluan Ruozhen had seen through it. Although the Yuzhen had not directly pointed it out, the relationship between the two sides was clearly very awkward. The fact that the two sides had set up camp in different directions was enough to show the problem. This brat, what a vicious gaze. De Wuxia unconsciously clenched his fists, his joints cracking as his desire to kill Wang Chong intensified. Wang Chong's gaze was far too sharp. In the current situation, he couldn't hide it even if he wanted to. Kid, you're too conceited. De Wuxia said fiercely. No matter what Wang Chong guessed, he would never admit it. No matter what happened between me and the people of Yuzhen, don't forget that the Prime Minister of Yuzhen is the one who wants to kill you the most. What do you think he would do if he knew that you only brought 5,000 men here? Behind Wang Chong, Li Sai, Kong Xian, Huang Batian, and the others all paled upon hearing this. Although the Wuxian cavalry were peerless in the world and feared no one, if De Wuxia, Huishu Wazang, Dusong Mangpoj, and the wise minister Daluan Ruozhen worked together, not even the Wuxian cavalry would be able to stop them. Interesting. War is the path of deception. Great General, you are correct. There is a high chance that Daluan Ruozhen will appear here. But how do you know that I only brought 5,000 Wuxian cavalry? Wang Chong faintly smiled, his expression naturally suffused with confidence. Bzzz. Wuxia paled at these words, his gaze involuntarily looking past Wang Chong into the darkness behind him. He had always believed that Wang Chong had only brought 5,000 men with him, but if Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli had come as well, everything would be different. He had to reconsider. But when he saw the merciless ridicule in Wang Chong's eyes, Wuxia suddenly understood and flew into a rage. Bastard! Do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Don't you value that subordinate of yours? Do you believe that I won't kill him right now and leave you with nothing? You dare! Wang Chong's expression chilled, his eyes exploding with killing intent. Even before a top-class imperial great general like Wuxia, he made no attempt to hide his killing intent. Behind Wang Chong, clang clang clang. Countless Wuxian cavalry took out their weapons and aimed them at Wuxia. Huh, just a nameless soldier. I, Wuxia, have killed countless people. There is no one in this world that I don't dare to kill. Wuxia heartily laughed. At his level of cultivation and status, there was truly nothing he didn't dare to do. He might even be willing to part with the formation phenomena. In any case, it was just a matter of capturing one more person. Bastard! Behind Wang Chong, Li Sai, Kong Xian, Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others all angrily roared, their eyes red. Wang Chong's eyes were also surging with killing intent. He had never imagined that Wuxia would say such a thing, but Wang Chong quickly calmed down. Very good. Wang Chong looked at Wuxia and sneered. It seems like there's no need for further discussion. Since you've already made your decision, we'll do as you say. But in the future, you will never be able to obtain the formation phenomena again. In addition, I forgot to tell you that I seem to have left some soldiers in the City of Steel. Starting from now, for every Chen Bin you kill, I'll have 10,000 shepherds of the Turkic steppe buried with him. If you kill 2, I'll have 20,000 Turkic shepherds buried with them. Li Sai, let's go. With these words, Wang Chong immediately ordered his army to retreat. Across from him, Wuxia instantly paled. The Western Turkic Khaganate was connected to the Tang dynasty's Qishi, and many shepherds lived on the steppe along the border, with many tribes herding cattle and sheep. Ishbara Khagan had once ordered the shepherds to retreat so that they wouldn't be caught up in the war with the Tang dynasty. But because there were several extremely precious underground rivers and oases with lush water and grass, the Western Turkic Khaganate shepherds would often graze their cattle and herd their sheep there. No matter how much they tried to forbid it, it was useless. Wuxia had never been a soft-hearted general, and he didn't care how many people Wang Chong killed. But these were still the shepherds of the Western Turks. Wuxia didn't care about Wang Chong's actions, but Ishbara Khagan couldn't. When the fourth prince was captured, he had strenuously opposed the exchange of 200,000 warhorses, but when Wang Chong led his soldiers into the steppe and began a massacre, Ishbara Khagan immediately agreed. Not only that, a large part of the reason he had sent soldiers to Talas to join with Daluan Ruozan and the Uzan in dealing with the Tang dynasty was that Ishbara Khagan was furious at the Qishi protectorate's actions of expelling and slaughtering the shepherds. If Wang Chong were to send soldiers to the northwest at this time, enter the Turkic steppe and start another massacre, and then claim that it was because of him, Ishbara Khagan would assuredly vent his anger on Wang Chong. Bastard! Too despicable! Wuxia's eyes burned with rage. It had to be said that Wang Chong had struck his weak point. In this clash, he had not gained the slightest advantage. Wait a moment. Wuxia immediately called out to Wang Chong. Killing Chen Bin was just an empty threat. How could he be so impulsive about something as important as formation phenomena? But right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Daluan Ruozan, come out. Wang Chong had only taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped, looked around, and harshly called out. All was quiet, and Wuxia's expression froze as he swallowed back the words he had been about to say. Behind him, Shamshak, Chechen Benba, and the tens of thousands of Western Turkic soldiers all had dumbfounded looks on their faces. Daluan Ruozan. When had he come? Why didn't they know? Moreover, weren't Daluan Ruozan and Uzan's armies stationed 20 li to the rear? How had he appeared here? In the thick darkness, the earth and sky seemed to merge into one, leaving behind only a few protruding shadows. Just when everyone thought that Wang Chong had made a mistake, they all heard a familiar voice in their ears. "Ha, young Marquis, since you've come, why are you in such a rush to leave?" Soft laughter came out of the darkness, not from behind the Wuxia, but from behind the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. As the laughter faded away, a graceful figure emerged from the crowd, walking out from a place several thousand zhang behind the Wuxian cavalry. Behind him was a stalwart and domineering figure, his hand on his saber like a guardian deity. In another direction, another figure exuding a storm of energy was walking over, accompanied by Tibetan generals. The two sides, one on the left and one on the right, cut off the path of retreat for Wang Chong and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. If the Wuxia and the Western Turks were added to the mix, the three sides would form an encirclement around Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozan, Huishu Wizang, Dusong Mengpoj. The sight of these three familiar figures left all the Western Turkic soldiers dumbfounded, and even de Wuxia couldn't help but widen his eyes. "Great General, I heard that you had a guest, so I brought some people over to take a look." "Great General won't mind, right?" Daluan Ruozan faintly smiled as he walked forward, accompanied by Huishu Wizang. "Of course not when the Prime Minister is here." De Wuxia's face was stiff as he spoke. When he had looked around earlier, he had not noticed any great general-level characters in the vicinity. Now that he thought about it, Daluan Ruozan, Huishu Wizang, and Dusong Mengpoj must have taken advantage of his battle with Wang Chong to sneak over while his attention was focused on Wang Chong. At a time like this, the person de Wuxia least wanted to see was undoubtedly Daluan Ruozan. Great General's magnanimity is worthy of Daluan Ruozan's admiration. Daluan Ruozan faintly smiled as he turned to Wang Chong. "Daluan Ruozan, you really did come." Wang Chong's enormous God King Yama did not wait for Daluan Ruozan to speak. I've been waiting for Marquis for quite some time." Chapter 10-12. The Mutri Great Cavalry. Wang Chong's pupils constricted at the sight of these elite cavalry, and he instantly recognized them. He had never imagined that Daluan Ruozan would bring out his most elite cavalry at a time like this. The Uzan Mutri Great Cavalry, the Western Turk Celestial Wolf Cavalry, and 3 elite great generals were enough to destroy Wang Chong and his 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. In truth, Daluan Ruozan had made no attempt to hide his intentions. As he spoke, the encirclement formed by the elite forces of the two empires rapidly shrank. At the same time, bzzz. 2 enormous energies, as heavy as steel, flew through the air and locked onto Wang Chong. Wang Chong felt his body sink, and he grimaced. And this was not the end. At almost the same time, a third great general-level energy shot out from behind him and locked onto Wang Chong. De Wuxia had also taken action at this moment. Although he was unwilling to see Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wizang at a time like this, de Wuxia had chosen to cooperate with them. As an imperial great general, he always placed the overall situation above all else. His strategic goal was always to surpass his personal grudges and interests. "Brat, you can't blame anyone else. I said before, you're too conceited." De Wuxia growled. He had originally planned to make a private deal with Wang Chong, but Daluan Ruozan's appearance had thrown all this into disarray. Not even he could do anything now. Rather than allowing him to leave, it was better to completely wipe out this force. If he could capture Wang Chong, that would be the best result. At the very least, it would be much more useful than interrogating Chen Bin. The situation rapidly reversed, and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry were plunged into an unprecedented crisis. The 3 great generals, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, and the other Wuxian cavalry all paled at the sight of the approaching force. At this moment, all of them sensed an unprecedented aura of death. Ha ha ha, just when Daluan Ruozhen had finished his preparations and the two sides had surrounded the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, Wang Chong suddenly laughed, his expression devoid of any nervousness. This abnormal action left everyone dumbfounded, and even Daluan Ruozhen subconsciously stopped. Daluan Ruozhen, do you really think that you can keep me here? Wang Chong's voice was brimming with confidence. His eyes swept over Daluan Ruozhen, Huishu Wuzong, and Dusong Mangpoch, and an enormous wave of energy erupted from his body. Even though he was surrounded by three great generals, he showed no fear, as if he had something to rely on. In the darkness, the sight of Wang Chong's expression caused Daluan Ruozhen's heart to thump. This was not his first time fighting with Wang Chong, and no one understood more than him that this youth was more crafty and difficult to deal with than any opponent he had ever faced. His every step had been meticulously calculated. While it seemed careless, it was actually a trap. The moment one was most pleased with oneself was precisely the moment one failed. Daluan Ruozhen had learned this lesson in the War of the Southwest. Almost subconsciously, Daluan Ruozhen turned his head to look behind him. But the darkness was quiet, and there was nothing there. Huh, Wang Chong, I know that you're as crafty as a fox, but I'd like to see just how you'll escape this time. If you can still escape from three great generals and countless elite cavalry, then you really can be called the war god of the Tang dynasty. Even Gao Xianji would have to admit defeat. Daluan Ruozhen grinned. Without the slightest hesitation, Daluan Ruozhen shot a glance at Huishu Wuzong. Speed was of the essence in war, and a long night was fraught with many dreams. No matter how many tricks Wang Chong had up his sleeves, they were all too far away. As long as he could kill Wang Chong as quickly as possible, then everything would be over. Without Wang Chong, the Tang dynasty might still be the powerful Tang dynasty, but in Daluan Ruozhen's eyes, it was no longer worth fearing. Wang Chong, I'm sorry. Even though I wanted to have a contest of wits with you, whether it's wits or martial strength, the ultimate goal is still victory. I believe that if you were me, you would do the same. Daluan Ruozhen said to himself as he gazed at the massive God King Yama. No matter how regretful Daluan Ruozhen was, Huishu Wuzong had far fewer distracting thoughts. It was the duty of a soldier to follow orders, and he had never doubted Daluan Ruozhen's orders. Clang! A dazzling golden-red saber energy flashed through the air as Huishu Wuzong passed Daluan Ruozhen and shot into the air like a shooting star toward the massive God King Yama. At the same time, a vast golden light exploded from Huishu Wuzong's body. At the same time, this great general of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage began to rapidly transform. In the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a massive golden Buddha. This powerful energy was like a storm that assaulted everyone's senses. Bang! Before Huishu Wuzong could reach him, a massive Vajra pestle appeared in a flash of light, colliding with the heaven-shaking saber energy that Huishu Wuzong had unleashed. Rumble! Golden light illuminated the world. After reaching the brigadier general level, Wang Chong's stellar energy had turned completely golden. The clash of stellar energy seemed to tear apart the night sky. Huishu Wuzong's attack was like a signal, opening the trap that the three great generals had set up to kill Wang Chong, the star of the Tang dynasty. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, Dusong Mangpoch's eyes flashed with cold light as he pulled out his saber and followed Huishu Wuzong. Like a blazing comet, he slashed at Wang Chong with astonishing power. At the same time, Dewusili hesitated. He still hadn't obtained the formation phenomena, so he didn't want to kill Wang Chong so quickly. But even so, Dewusili still made the wise decision to cooperate with Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoch in an attack. Rumble! A wave of energy weighing 100,000 tons exploded as Dewusili became one with his halberd and used the celestial wolf's divine procession to shoot toward Wang Chong like an arrow. The moment the three great generals attacked, the world seemed to dim in comparison, their dreadful momentum leaving everyone dumbfounded. Milord! Marquis! On the ground, Li Sai, Kong Xian, and the others couldn't help but call out at this sight, their faces turning ghastly pale. On the other side, Shamshak and Chechen Benba gave faint smiles. But the development of events was completely different from what they had imagined. Boom. As Dusong Mangpoj flew through the air toward Wang Chong, there was a massive boom behind him. The earth split open as a massive black ape arm emerged from the ground and swatted at Dusong Mangpoj like he was swatting a fly. Roar! The giant ape roared, and the earth rumbled. Under the shocked gazes of countless people, a gigantic creature leaped into the air, appearing in front of everyone. Swoosh! All of the Mutri great cavalry were horrified at the sudden appearance of this colossus. As if greatly frightened, they scattered in all directions. On the other side, the tens of thousands of Western Turkic soldiers, including the Celestial Wolf cavalry, seemed to be greatly alarmed and began to retreat. As for the Celestial Wolf Great General Dewusili who had been charging at Wang Chong, his eyes went wide as if he had seen a ghost and he began to retreat. The consecrated. At this moment, Dewusili felt like he had been struck by a bolt of lightning, his mind in turmoil and at a complete loss for what to do. He had never imagined that the giant ape would appear before him in this manner. The giant ape's offense and defense far surpassed that of an imperial great general. It was not something he could deal with. A single behemoth was enough to change the course of the battle. And what left Dewusili the most confused was that he had clearly observed Wang Chong's 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, but not that giant ape. And if Wang Chong wanted to hide this from him, he would have to, damn it. As if understanding something, Dewusili clenched his fists in fury. Even though he was angry and unwilling, Dewusili had no choice but to avoid the behemoth that had suddenly appeared. Without Dusong Mangpoj's cooperation, he and Huishu Wuzong would not be able to kill Wang Chong in a short time. But if the behemoth arrived, not only would his Western Turkic army suffer grievous losses, he and Huishu Wuzong would also be hard-pressed to protect themselves, and there was a high chance that they would die here. Rumble. In the distance, the giant ape's massive foot descended. Aya! Miserable screams rang out from the billowing dust as several dozen Mutri great cavalry were crushed into meat paste by the giant ape before they could even dodge. Even their armor was crushed into round iron pancakes. Retreat, retreat, retreat. All soldiers, retreat. Dewusili became even more anxious at this sight, his voice harsh and harsh. Ha ha ha, Dewusili, what's the rush? Didn't you want to attack us just a moment ago? Why are you in such a rush to leave now? Wang Chong heartily laughed. Rumble. As Wang Chong spoke, the giant ape's fist smashed down, causing the earth to crack open. Several dozen Mutri great cavalry were pulverized, and the enormous power of the giant ape sent even more Mutri great cavalry flying like ragdolls. Plush plush. The chests of these Mutri great cavalry trembled, and while still in the air, they vomited blood, their bodies heavily injured. Although the Mutri great cavalry had formidable defenses, they were far from being a match for a consecrated that could wound even great generals. Roar. Chapter 10:13. Retreat. Hurry and retreat. Daluan Ruozen's eyes widened and his expression paled, all traces of his previous composure gone. He instantly understood that he had fallen into Wang Chong's trap. A giant ape of this size could not possibly be hidden, and Daluan Ruozen had never imagined that Wang Chong would have placed this Arabian behemoth in an ambush some distance away from the Turkic camp. And he had only arrived with the Wuxian cavalry after making all the necessary preparations. Daluan Ruozen had been so focused on dealing with Wang Chong that he had forgotten about Wang Chong's other tricks. I was still too careless. As expected, I can't rely on any luck when fighting with him. Daluan Ruozen clenched his fists, his brow furrowed in rage. He had originally thought that this operation would be a little too easy, but his desire to kill Wang Chong had still taken the upper hand. If the plan was right and he killed Wang Chong, it would be a massive transformation for the Battle of Talas and even for Uzun, the Western Turkic Khaganate, and all the other countries bordering the Tang dynasty. All the countries would have one less major threat in the future. Given how Wang Chong was developing, no one would be able to stop him in the future. But this momentary greed had ultimately been used by Wang Chong. Everyone, retreat. Daluan Ruozhen's eyes were filled with panic. The attack power of the giant ape was simply too astonishing. The several thousand Mutri great cavalry were completely useless before it. Not only that, this time, even Daluan Ruozhen was within its attack range. Roar! With a heaven-shaking roar, a massive fist rapidly appeared over Daluan Ruozhen's head and smashed down. Prime Minister! Cries of alarm rang out, and Daluan Ruozhen grimaced. Although he was intelligent and knew a few martial arts, only his control over stellar energy and precision surpassed that of an ordinary person. His true level of cultivation was simply not high. At the very least, he was far from the level of Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoch. Beast, stop! A roar came from the distance, and a scimitar shot forward like a bolt of lightning, slamming into the giant ape's fist with the force of a thunderbolt. The immense power of this scimitar actually managed to push the giant ape's fist back several zhang. In the distance, Dusong Mengpoch had a nervous expression on his face as he threw out his scimitar. But Dusong Mengpoch had still underestimated the strength of the giant ape in Wang Chong's hand. Boom! The moment the right hand was pushed aside, the giant ape's left arm swung up with an astonishing momentum and smacked down at Daluan Ruozhen. Buzz! The earth quaked, sending a plume of dust several dozen zhang into the air. Wherever the giant ape's iron fist landed, the ground cracked and caved in, tearing open countless cracks. What a pity! As the giant ape's fist descended, Wang Chong's God King Yama couldn't help but sigh. Dewusili, Huishu Wuzong, and Dusong Mengpoch might be powerful, but the true leader, Daluan Ruozhen, was the greatest threat. He was like the brains of the three, using the most precise method to maximize their strength. In this operation, Daluan Ruozhen had been scheming against him. But how could Wang Chong not be scheming against Daluan Ruozhen? Prime Minister, how are you? At almost the same time, in the distance, Huishu Wuzong let go of his fist, his stellar energy shaking off the dust on his body. As he looked at Daluan Ruozhen, Huishu Wuzong showed a hint of deep worry and concern. In that moment just now, Huishu Wuzong had sensed that Daluan Ruozhen was in danger and had suddenly intervened to save him from the giant ape. Huishu Wuzong had followed Daluan Ruozhen in managing the Ngari royal lineage for more than 20 years. The two had braved life and death and faced countless difficulties, forming an extremely deep friendship. From a certain perspective, their relationship had even surpassed that of a superior and subordinate. They were lifelong friends. I'm fine. Daluan Ruozhen shook his head, his gaze going past Huishu Wuzong to the distant Wang Chong. At this moment, many thoughts flitted through his mind. Daluan Ruozhen was not someone who did not care about his own safety, but from the moment Huishu Wuzong had appeared, Daluan Ruozhen knew that he was safe. He was more concerned about Wang Chong. Although the giant ape was invincible, Wang Chong was not. If he gathered the strength of Huishu Wuzong, Dusong Mengpoch, and Du Wuxi, he would still be able to kill Wang Chong. But this thought only flashed through Daluan Ruozhen's mind for a moment before it was obliterated by a voice. Ha ha ha, Daluan Ruozhen, Dewusili, Huishu Wuzong, and to think that you're imperial great generals, yet you're using numbers to bully him. 3 against 1 young man, and you're not ashamed at all. Come. I, Gao Xianji, will also accompany you. A resounding voice came from the distance. At first, it seemed to come from several hundred li away, but in the blink of an eye, it had appeared in everyone's perception with astonishing speed. When everyone turned their heads to look, the figure that could destroy heaven and earth like a storm was less than 10,000 meters away from them. In the dim starlight, they could clearly see several figures approaching with astonishing speed. As for the person in the lead, he had a tall stature, and he exuded an imposing manner. His aura, which was as sharp as an unsheathed sword, was enough to make anyone who saw him feel small and in awe. Gao Xianji, Doluan Ruozhen, Huishu Wuzong, and De Wussili immediately paled at the sight of this slender figure. Wang Chong and the giant ape were already extremely difficult to deal with, and now that the western region's war god Gao Xianji had joined the fray, the situation was getting worse and worse. Too powerful. He was clearly heavily injured by Abu Muslim, so how could he have recovered so quickly? De Wussili's face contorted in shock. Even Doluan Ruozhen had a look of fear on his face. From the speed and momentum of Doluan Ruozhen's appearance, he had mostly recovered from his injuries. The Anxi war god was even more terrifying than Wang Chong, and with the appearance of Gao Xianji, the other top-class generals of the Tang dynasty were probably not far away. If they didn't retreat now, they really would be left here. Let's go. Doluan Ruozhen's last sliver of thought about dealing with Wang Chong vanished. All the Uzun Mutri great cavalry swiftly retreated. But a moment later, a massive Vajrapesal flew through the air and smashed into the ground in front of the retreating Mutri great cavalry. The enormous force of the impact caused this Vajrapesal condensed from stellar energy to plunge deeply into the earth. Roar! Roar! Almost at the same time, the giant ape roared savagely and leaped into the air, landing in another direction where the Mutri great cavalry were fleeing. Rumble! The giant fist smashed into the ground, shattering rocks and sending dust into the air. The dozen or so Mutri great cavalry at the very front were instantly ripped to shreds. The giant ape showed no hesitation and immediately began to fiercely attack the fleeing Mutri great cavalry. Even though he was not confident that he could stop great generals like Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoch, he was more than enough to deal with the Mutri great cavalry. Even if the Mutri great cavalry could escape, they would have to pay a heavy price. Ah! Miserable screams rang out as the famed Mutri great cavalry were thrown into the air by the giant ape's attacks like straw, falling to the ground like weeds. In just a few short moments, 200 to 300 of these precious Mutri great cavalry had been killed. Kill! This was not the only danger the Mutri great cavalry faced. At almost the same time, Li Sai unsheathed his sword, instinctively grasping this opportunity to gather his army and charge at the fleeing Mutri great cavalry. Stop! A thunderous roar resounded through the night sky, attracting everyone's attention. Brat, do you still not want to take that Chenbin's life? If you don't stop, I'll kill him right now, and then we'll have another battle. De Wussili floated in the air, both shocked and furious. The giant ape had appeared far too abruptly, and now even Gao Xianji had appeared. It was hard to say who would win this battle, but if he did not stop Wang Chong and the giant ape, the soldiers he had brought with him would suffer grievous losses. Buzz! In just an instant, the huge battlefield immediately quietened down. The giant ape that had been attacking like a killing machine in the eyes of the Uzun and Western Turks suddenly stopped, its scarlet eyes fixed on the distant De Wussili. De Wussili, so, you still choose to make a deal? Wang Chong indifferently said. In the blink of an eye, the entire battlefield fell silent. Even Li Sai, Kong Xian, and the others who had already rushed out turned their heads, their attention focused on the two commanders. Even Doluan Ruozhen, Huishu Wuzong, and Dusong Mengpoch looked over. Wang Chong had long ago prepared himself for this battle. The only people who could stop this battle were De Wussili and his Chenbin. I said nothing of the sort. De Wussili's pupils constricted, but he quickly regained his composure. He would never admit to such a thing in front of so many people. Wang Chong only smiled and gave De Wussili a profound glance. Wang Chong, this is an extremely rare opportunity. No one knows when the giant ape will die. If you want to use his strength to kill the Western Turks and Uzun's men, this is your best chance. A voice as soft as a mosquito suddenly came from next to his ear. Qing Qianli and Gao Xianji were rushing over from the distance. The Mutri great cavalry on the left and right saw these two, their eyes brimming with fear as they began to retreat. A man's name was like a tree's shadow. There was no one who did not know the names of the two commanders of the Anshi Protectorate Army, and even the Mutri Great Cavalry felt some apprehension. There's no rush. The giant ape has already killed some of the Mutri Great Cavalry. Now that they're all prepared, it's impossible to completely wipe them out. The only ones who can move are Dewussali's Turkic cavalry. But if we want to deal with the ordinary soldiers of the Western Turks, we don't need the giant ape. Once we save Chen Bin, we can still wipe them out. Chapter 10:14. This truly was an excellent opportunity to deal with the Western Turks and Uzun soldiers and reduce the strength of their armies. But the giant ape could only kill for a short time. It would only take 2 or 3 days at most before it died, but Chen Bin's influence on the army would last for a long time. Under his command, the ballista army would be able to kill far more enemies than the giant ape. This is fine. Qing Qianli hesitated for a moment before nodding. Dewussali, as you wish, I can withdraw my soldiers. But remember, 3/4 to the afternoon tomorrow is the deadline for our transaction. Bring Chen Bin back unscathed, and you will have one last chance to obtain the formation phenomena from me. After 3/4 to the afternoon, all transactions will be null and void. I will never agree to any transaction related to formation phenomena. In addition, if Chen Bin has not returned to my camp by then it will be time for our vengeance. Dewussali, you will pay 100 times the price. Let's go. With a cold snort, Wang Chong turned his head and led his army into the distance. This time, Dewussali, Daluan Ruozan, and Huishu Wizang did not try to stop them. All the Mutri Great Cavalry had long ago scattered, naturally creating a path for them. In the end, even after Wang Chong had led his army into the darkness, neither side moved. Great General. Once Wang Chong had left, Daluan Ruozan faintly smiled and turned to Dewussali. This simple smile caused Dewussali's heart to thump, and he suddenly had an ill foreboding. The people he had wanted to hide the fact that he had secretly kidnapped Chen Bin from Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wizang. Otherwise, there would have been no need for him to put on such a show. But man proposes, heaven disposes. When dealing with a person like Daluan Ruozan, one could not rely on luck. Not only had Daluan Ruozan seen through him, he had even placed him in an extremely passive position. Prime Minister. Dewussali called out, but he could only brace himself and step forward. I seem to have heard that Qixi Protector General mentioned the words formation phenomena. If the Great General had told us in advance, perhaps Huishu and I could have given the Great General some advice, and we would have gotten the formation phenomena a long time ago. Daluan Ruozan gestured to Huishu Wizang and Duso Mangpoch, and then led the Mutri Great Cavalry forward, stopping in front of Dewussali. Dewussali instantly paled at Daluan Ruozan's words. Daluan Ruozan's words were very subtle, but his meaning was obvious. I also want a share of formation phenomena. And this was precisely what Dewussali was doing his utmost to avoid. Although the Western Turks and the Uzun had different topographies and altitudes, they were both steppe countries that primarily relied on grazing. Both countries were also renowned for their cavalry. If Dewussali could turn the Western Turkic Khaganate upside down and forge an even stronger Turkic Empire with the formation phenomena, there was no doubt that Daluan Ruozan and the Uzun could do the same. Prime Minister truly has a good eye. As expected, nothing can be hidden from Prime Minister. Even if Prime Minister didn't say anything, I was prepared to tell Prime Minister in a little while. Alas, this brat is still too crafty. Although he was extremely unwilling, Dewussali could only brace himself and speak. Although Daluan Ruozan's martial arts were negligible, in terms of intelligence, not even Dewussali could gain the upper hand. Rather than being discovered by Daluan Ruozan and forced into a passive position, it was better to be honest. Great General speaks the truth. After all, he is the son of heaven's disciple that Emperor Tang personally conferred. He truly isn't that easy to deal with. Daluan Ruozhen faintly smiled, exuding an extraordinary bearing. Dewussili was prepared to tell him of his own volition, but Daluan Ruozhen would not believe a single word. But whether it was Daluan Ruozhen or Dewussili, both of them were smart enough to ignore this point. As long as Dewussili was willing to share a piece of the pie, for Daluan Ruozhen, nothing else mattered. After exchanging pleasantries with Dewussili, Daluan Ruozhen quickly left with his troops. "Sir," Daluan Ruozhen said, "that Wang Chong is cunning, but I'm afraid he himself is the most cunning. We were planting trees in front of him, but he didn't do anything. Instead, he came to pick the fruit. This is too despicable." When Daluan Ruozhen and the others left, Chechen Benba finally couldn't help but say angrily, "Yes, these Uzun people are really going too far. Do they really think they can eat us?" Shamshak echoed, his face seething with rage. But Shamask had barely finished speaking when a slap slammed into his face, the immense force of the slap causing Shamask to stagger. Shamshak covered his face in shock. "Bastard thing." Dewussili glared at Shamshak, his expression icy. "If you hadn't failed to live up to expectations and lost to an Imperial Marshal Tang people, making a joke of yourself in front of the Uzun, they would never have become so impudent." Shamshak's face was red, his mouth opened and closed, but not a single word came out. Dewussili paid no attention to Shamshak. With a flick of his sleeve, he strode toward the center of the camp. At the same time, Tensum Li from the western Turkic camp, Daluan Ruozhen and Huishu Huaitsang were leading a group of Mutri Great Cavalry toward the camp of the main army. Dewussili seems to be very unwilling. Halfway there, Huishu Huaitsang suddenly said, "It would be strange if he was willing. He was guarding against us in this deal with formation phenomena." Daluan Ruozhen faintly smiled. "But even if he's unwilling, it's no longer up to him." Dusong Mangpoj suddenly interjected. Daluan Ruozhen's schemes had always been closely linked. If they succeeded in tonight's operation, they could kill Wang Chong, and even if they failed, they could still extract benefits from Dewussili. Even if Dewussili was extremely unwilling, he would still have to agree. Dusong Mangpoj had no choice but to admire this. But formation phenomena are no small matter, and our two empires are far too similar. One mountain cannot hold two tigers. Given Dewussili's style, will he really be willing to give it to us? Dusong Mangpoj suddenly thought of something and spoke. The entire army fell silent, and Daluan Ruozhen suddenly stopped on his horse. This sudden movement immediately attracted the attention of the army. Huishu Wizang, Dusong Mangpoj, and all the Mutri Great Cavalry stopped, all eyes focused on Daluan Ruozhen. Won't we know when the time comes if he's willing?" Daluan Ruozhen faintly smiled, and then he urged his horse to gallop into the distance. Behind him, Huishu Wizang and Dusong Mangpoj glanced at each other and quickly followed. It was high noon, and the scorching sun scorched the earth. A massive dragon banner was thrust into the east side of the city of Talas, atop the high hills. Wang Chong stood beneath the dragon banner, Gao Shenji, Qing Qianli, the other Tang dynasty generals, and the Wushan cavalry at his side. All of them stood motionless, silently gazing to the east as they waited. "Marquis, will Dewussili and the others not come?" After some time, Xue Qianjun suddenly broke the silence. He slowly raised his head to the sky, a hint of worry in his eyes. The blazing sun hung high in the sky, and it was already close to a quarter to the noon hour. This was the time that Wang Chong had said would be the final transaction, but there was still no sign of Dewussili or Chen Bin. "Relax, he will come," Wang Chong indifferently said. His calm tone caused Xue Qianjun and the surrounding generals to calm down, the anxiety in their hearts lessening. Wang Chong was not blindly confident, nor was he overly trusting of Dewussili. Instead, he had come to this conclusion after careful consideration. After fighting alongside Chen Bin for so long, Wang Chong knew that Chen Bin would rather die than open his mouth. Dewussili was far too greedy. If he could not get what he wanted from Chen Bin, he would definitely take the initiative to make a deal with Wang Chong. Look! Just as everyone was waiting, someone suddenly pointed into the distance and shouted. A moment later, the earth began to quake and dust began to churn. On the distant horizon, one could see a vast army surging toward them like a surging tide. It's the Western Turks. No, there's also Uzin's men. Everyone looked into the distance and suddenly exclaimed. In the distance, they could see two large banners flapping in the wind amidst the roiling dust. One was the banner of a golden wolf with a blue background, while the other was the sacred banner of a white yak with a black background. The mood instantly turned grave. After fighting with the Uzin and the Western Turks for so many days, they were all extremely familiar with the tactics of both sides. Uzin's Mutri great cavalry rode side by side, their armor gleaming with a cold metallic light. Around 2,000 zhang from Wang Chong's group, Dewusili and Daluan Ruozhen stopped. Everyone swept their gazes over Wang Chong's group, quickly passing over the hill to look at the giant ape in the back. What's going on? Why isn't this beast dead yet? Dewusili's face was filled with viciousness and deep apprehension. The Arabs had a total of 4 behemoths, but the first 3 had been killed. For some reason, the last giant ape was still alive. In terms of pure strength, no one on the battlefield, not even Dewusili, was a match for this beast. Dewusili did not dare to get his army too close, and he had to be prepared to retreat at a moment's notice to avoid being ambushed by this beast. Great General, let's go. Daluan Ruozhen said with a smirk on his face. Dewusili hesitated for a moment, but despite his reluctance, he still nodded. Hiya. Chapter 10-15. Marquis, they've brought Chen Bin here. Almost at the same time, Li Sai, who was on the high hill, also spoke. His eyes immediately fell on Chen Bin, who was standing beside Dewusili. Although Chen Bin's hands and feet were bound and even his eyes were blindfolded, Li Sai could still recognize Chen Bin, who was sitting on Dewusili's horse, at a glance. He looks fine. Although he's suffered some superficial wounds, he's generally fine. Gao Xianji also spoke after a moment of silence. From the moment Dewusili appeared, he had been observing Chen Bin, who was standing beside Dewusili. With Gao Xianji's level of cultivation, he could tell at a glance whether Chen Bin was seriously injured or not. Wang Chong nodded. He patted the horse's back and galloped forward at high speed. Let's go. It's time to switch back to Chen Bin. Under the blazing sun, plumes of smoke and dust rose into the air. Just 1,000 zhang away from the two camps, Wang Chong and Dewusili met. In an instant, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone's eyes were focused on Wang Chong and Dewusili. They all held their breaths, not daring to breathe too loudly. Kid, I've brought him here. Where's the formation phenomena I wanted? Dewusili said coldly, looking at Wang Chong, who was 10 steps away. Although he looked normal on the surface, Dewusili's brows revealed a hint of irritation and anger that could not be concealed. Ever since he had kidnapped Chen Bin, Dewusili had tried everything he could think of, hoping to pry the secrets of formation phenomena from Chen Bin's mouth. However, no matter what Dewusili did, he could not get a single word out of Chen Bin. The most he got was Chen Bin's laughter and mockery. Given Dewusili's temperament, he simply wanted to hack Chen Bin into pieces to vent his anger. However, Wang Chong's words before he left had caused Dewusili to have many misgivings. Every time he interrogated Chen Bin, he had no choice but to expend a great deal of energy to treat Chen Bin's injuries and help him recover. Dewusili had spent more than 20 years pursuing the secret of formation phenomena. This secret was far too important to him, so much so that Dewusili could not tolerate any mistakes. Marquis. Do not give him the formation phenomena. My life is not important, but please do not let him have his way no matter what. Just then, Chen Bin suddenly shouted. His eyes were blindfolded and he couldn't see what was happening outside, but Chen Bin kept his ears open and listened carefully. Chen Bin had persevered for so many days and endured the torture to prevent Du Wuxia from succeeding. If Wang Chong agreed to the deal with Du Wuxia, wouldn't all his previous efforts be in vain? Shut your mouth. Du Wuxia jabbed out with his finger, instantly sealing off Chen Bin's limbs and mute acupuncture points. Wang Chong, I've already brought him to you. You won't go back on your word, right? Du Wuxia wanted to kill Chen Bin, but what he feared the most was that Wang Chong would suddenly change his mind and cancel the deal. Du Wuxia, I naturally keep my word, but do you still remember what I said last night? I said finish. Good. Nothing. Damage. Wang Chong coldly said. Kid, don't try to act innocent after getting what you want. When I brought your subordinate back from the battlefield, he was already on his last breath, not far from death. This happened while you were fighting the skyquaking giants, and it had nothing to do with me. I spent a great deal of energy to treat your subordinate, so he deserves a word of thanks from you. Du Wuxia said. Wang Chong's eyebrows rose as he subconsciously glanced at Chen Bin. The skyquaking army was descending from the sky, launching long-range attacks, and the giant ballistae guarded by Chen Bin and Su Kei were the main targets of the skyquaking giants. Wang Chong was well aware of this. Wang Chong only needed a glance to know that Du Wuxia was not lying, and his expression relaxed. Very good. Du Wuxia, I always keep my word. The secret of formation phenomena is here, so hand over my subordinate. Wang Chong faintly smiled as he reached into his bosom and took out a thin sheet of snow paper. Holding it between his index and middle fingers, he raised it high into the air. The mood instantly changed. Du Wuxia stared at the folded sheet of paper, his eyes blazing. Even Daluan Ruozhen slightly raised his head, a serious expression on his face. Although Daluan Ruozhen had maintained his composure this entire time, if Ozhen could obtain the true secret of formation phenomena, it would be an irresistible temptation for Ozhen. Time seemed to stop, and even breathing became ragged. The ordinary sheet of paper in Wang Chong's hand instantly became the undisputed center of attention. On the other side, even though Chen Bin's mute acupoint was sealed and his body was under Wang Chong's control, his hearing wasn't affected. Even though Chen Bin couldn't speak, his body was clearly trembling. Du Wuxia, you only have one chance. Have you still not thought it through? Wang Chong waved the sheet of paper in his hand. In an instant, as if awakening from a dream, everyone turned their heads around. The secret of formation phenomena. The thing that Du Wuxia had dreamed of the most in his life was now within reach. At this moment, Du Wuxia found it hard to remain calm. As he gazed at the thin snow-white paper, a hint of desire appeared in his eyes. Without hesitation, Du Wuxia shook his wrist and instinctively reached for Chen Bin on horseback. Wait! Just as he was about to hand Chen Bin over, Du Wuxia's heart skipped a beat and he snapped out of his daze. Kid, how do I know if what you're giving me is real? The atmosphere froze in an instant, and the initial frenzy dissipated. Everyone's eyes became calm. That's right. Only Wang Chong could master the secret of formation phenomena. No one knew if it was real or not. If Wang Chong used a fake one to fool them, no one would be able to tell the difference. Du Wuxia was no fool. He had to be on his guard. Heh, Wang Chong faintly smiled, and under the reluctant gazes of the crowd, he slowly put away the snowy paper. His expression was calm and unruffled, as if he had already predicted this development. Du Wuxia had a suspicious personality, and an imperial great general of this level was not easy to fool. I just knew that Lord Protector General wouldn't trust me so easily. With a flick of his wrist, Wang Chong tossed out another sheet of paper. Strengthened by his stellar energy, this thin sheet of paper was no different from steel. Swish! The paper whistled through the air as it shot toward Du Wuxia's face. Confused, Du Wuxia extended a finger and caught the paper that Wang Chong had thrown at him. What's this? Du Wuxia asked, a look of confusion on his face. Around him, Daluan Ruozhen, Wuxia Wuzong, and the others also looked over. No one knew what Wang Chong was up to with the two letters, one at the front and one at the back. This sheet of paper records part of the secret of formation phenomena. Dewusili, you have 7,000 celestial wolf cavalry under your command. Pick 60 of them and have them cultivate according to the method written here. You'll soon know if it's real or fake. These words took everyone by surprise. Not even Dewusili had expected such a move. Prime Minister, what's going on? On the other side, Dusong Mengpoch frowned and subconsciously lowered his voice. I don't know. Let's wait and see. Daluan Ruozhen said, his brow creasing. This matter was somewhat different from what he had expected. Not even he could understand Wang Chong's actions. Up ahead, Dewusili did not think so much. He gave Wang Chong a profound glance and waved his hand behind him. Soon, 60 fully armored celestial wolf cavalry galloped out from the rear, brimming with energy. Cultivate according to the method written here. Dewusili only glanced at the paper before handing it over to a celestial wolf cavalry officer in the rear. Yes, my lord. The 60 celestial wolf cavalry received the order and galloped away. They took up formation and began to cultivate according to the method written on the paper. All was quiet as everyone focused their attention on the 60 celestial wolf cavalry. Daluan Ruozhen, Wuxia Wuzong, Dewusili, everyone was paying attention to the development of this matter. Only Wang Chong silently smiled at the distant celestial wolf cavalry. As an elite force of cavalry that could dominate the world, the celestial wolf cavalry were the cream of the crop in terms of strength, experience, and comprehension. By using Wang Chong's formation phenomena on them, they could be used to their greatest potential in the shortest amount of time. Time passed by, and soon enough, the 60 celestial wolf cavalry finished their cultivation, each of them undergoing a subtle transformation. My lord, we're ready. The celestial wolf cavalry officer rode over and respectfully reported to Dewusili. Dewusili's eyes flashed like lightning as he swept them over. At this moment, his eyes were filled with bewilderment. When Wang Chong had first tossed the paper over, Dewusili hadn't paid it much attention, but when he saw the transformation of the 60 celestial wolf cavalry, Dewusili couldn't help but begin to doubt it. He could clearly sense that after cultivating the contents of Wang Chong's paper, everyone's aura had clearly grown thicker and more profound. Even with Dewusili's experience and knowledge, he had never seen any technique that could cause such a massive transformation in the celestial wolf cavalry in such a short time. Begin. Dewusili waved his hand. At this moment, not even he realized that he had unwittingly developed a hint of anticipation. Boom! A moment later, the 60 celestial wolf cavalry formed into a formation and began to gallop off into the distance. After traveling 100 meters, the celestial wolf cavalry let out a fierce roar. In a flash, a powerful energy of the world surged through the air, connecting the officer and the 60 celestial wolf cavalry together. Clang! The 60 celestial wolf cavalry pulled out their weapons and pointed them at the sky. Rumble! A moment later, something that left everyone stunned occurred. There was a thunderous boom. 30 meters above the celestial wolf cavalry, black clouds began to gather from all directions, gathering above the celestial wolf cavalry. This phenomenon immediately vanished, but everyone present, whether it was Dewusili or Daluan Ruozhen, was stunned. Formation phenomena. Chapter 10:16. Shock. Everyone was shocked speechless by this sight, and the dignified atmosphere instantly became subtle. Even the look in Daluan Ruozhen's eyes had changed. Dewusili, what do you think? Wang Chong withdrew his gaze from the distance and looked at Dewusili with a grin. Dewusili gave Wang Chong a deep look, then suddenly smiled. Kid, you're quite lucky that someone is willing to trade something like formation phenomena for your life. With a tug of his right hand, Dewusili instantly tore off the black cloth covering Chen Bin's eyes. At the same time, he reached out and unsealed Chen Bin's mute acupoint, then released him. Marquis. No. You can't give him the formation phenomena. As soon as he opened his eyes, Chen Bin shouted angrily and anxiously. The matter of formation phenomena was extremely important. He had endured the pain and torture, refusing to reveal it, all to prevent the secret of formation phenomena from falling into De Wussely's hands. If Wang Chong gave the secret of formation phenomena to De Wussely, then all his previous efforts would be wasted. De Wussely, I definitely won't let you have your way. Seeing that the deal was about to be completed, Chen Bin's eyes flashed with determination. With a thought, he suddenly bit down on the root of his tongue. But in the next moment, before Chen Bin could bite his tongue to commit suicide, a hand like an iron clamp clamped down on Chen Bin's lower jaw. You want to commit suicide in front of me? A voice resounded in his ear. De Wussely smiled coldly, and Chen Bin's heart instantly sank. Wang Chong. You have guts. As long as you give me the real formation phenomena, I'll return your subordinates to you. How about it? De Wussely turned his head and looked at Wang Chong said. All right. Wang Chong smiled calmly. Even in front of De Wussely, the heavenly wolf general, his aura was not inferior in the slightest. I'll give you the first half of the mystery of formation phenomena first, and I'll give you the other half after you've sent my subordinates down. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Chong took out the letter from before. With a wave of his hand, it transformed into a streak of white light that shot toward De Wussely. De Wussely stretched out his hand and subconsciously took it. Unlike before, De Wussely opened the letter and read it carefully. A few moments later, De Wussely took the first sheet of paper from the celestial wolf cavalry officer and carefully compared the two sheets of paper. When De Wussely did that, everyone remained silent, waiting for his answer. Unbelievable. I thought that the art of formation phenomena was lost. I didn't think that I would be able to obtain the supreme secret of the formation in a place like Talas. De Wussely's mind was in turmoil as he gripped the two letters. As one of the three supreme great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate, De Wussely's vision and experience far surpassed that of an ordinary person. Gold, jade, or beautiful women would find it very difficult to move De Wussely's heart. Even the most supreme of weapons would find it very difficult to move De Wussely's heart. But as he looked at the two letters in his hand that had cost no more than one tael of silver, De Wussely's heart began to thump. Formation phenomena. De Wussely had spent more than half his life searching for it to no avail, but now, he held it in his hands, and he was only missing the last part. De Wussely still had his vision and experience, so De Wussely only needed a glance to know that the first half of what Wang Chong had given him was real. The concept of these words and the mysteries of the great Tao and the principles of the world were not things that Wang Chong could fabricate in such a short time. No. No one could fabricate these words. The level and concept of these words clearly surpassed that of De Wussely's celestial wolf illusory formation, enough to make any formation on the continent pale in comparison. Most importantly, the concept of all the words flowed smoothly like flowing water, and they came from the same source without any flaws. If this technique had been fabricated in a single night, De Wussely would have no choice but to prostrate himself in admiration. Even if it was fake, he would accept it. This could only mean that De Wussely's eyesight was too poor. Even if he had been tricked, he deserved it. Or perhaps Wang Chong had known 3 or 4 months ago that he would come to Talas and coveted the formation phenomena, so he had spent a great deal of time and effort to prepare this formation phenomena to deal with him. But that was far too absurd. Brat, I can give him to you. De Wussely raised his head and smiled, at the same time putting the two letters into his bosom. But how do I know that the second half of your book is real and that you didn't tamper with it? If it's fake, wouldn't all my efforts have been for nothing? De Wussely, you're being too paranoid. I've already given you the first half, and you've tested the power of formation phenomena, but you still haven't released the person. How do we know that you won't release him? If you take the item but don't release him, won't we suffer even greater losses? Anshi Vice Protector General Cheng Qianli couldn't bear to watch any longer and finally interjected. The Tang dynasty had already displayed sufficient sincerity, but it seemed like de Wusseli wanted even more. This was simply pushing his luck. De Wusseli, you didn't see it, so of course you wouldn't know. Wang Chong finally spoke. His expression was calm, as if he had known that de Wusseli would ask this question. The second half might be fake, but it also might be real. De Wusseli, you have a paranoid personality, and I don't intend to convince you otherwise. You can choose to end the transaction right now. I won't get the person, and you won't get the formation phenomena, leaving us with nothing. But you can also choose to believe me and take a risk. This way, I can get my person back, and you can get the real formation phenomena. Make your choice. De Wusseli's expression froze. He had never imagined that Wang Chong would be so calm as to say that the second half might be fake. This caught him off guard, and he didn't know how to respond. If he had heard Wang Chong say these words in the past, he would have immediately turned and left, but now that he had seen the vast concept and power contained within the 2 scrolls of formation phenomena, de Wusseli found it impossible to so easily withdraw. Brat, aren't you being too arrogant? I've already obtained the contents of the 2 scrolls of formation phenomena. If you dare to speak to me like this, aren't you afraid that I'll kill him? De Wusseli slowly turned his head to look at Chen Bin, his eyes turning cold. At some point, his fingers had begun to clench, sending a stream of energy to his fingertips. If he tightened his grip, Chen Bin's bones would shatter and he would die. De Wusseli, Chen Bin is my subordinate, and I value him greatly, but to you and the Western Turks, he's just an insignificant, nameless pawn. To exchange an insignificant pawn for a scroll of formation phenomena. De Wusseli, you've already profited greatly. Are you willing to kill him? Wang Chong grinned, his sharp eyes stabbing into de Wusseli's heart like swords. On the other side, Daluan Ruozen's eyes twitched at Wang Chong's words, a hint of interest flashing through his eyes. De Wusseli still didn't understand Wang Chong at all. Argue with him? Not even Daluan Ruozen was a match for him, much less de Wusseli. Okay. Just as Daluan Ruozen had predicted, de Wusseli laughed and made his choice. Brat, I can make a deal with you, but we'll exchange the person and the item. I'll count to 3, and when I reach 1, I'll throw you your subordinate and you'll throw me what I want. We'll work together, and no one is allowed to play any tricks. If I discover that what you're giving me is fake, I'll first kill Chen Bin, and then I'll kill all your subordinates. Of course. If I discover that you won't release him or try to kill him midway, I'll destroy the letter and you'll never obtain the formation phenomena. This will be my first and last time making a deal with anyone. Wang Chong waved his sleeve and smiled. In the end, de Wusseli had been unable to resist the temptation of the formation phenomena. But as long as he could save Chen Bin, it would all be worth it. At the final moment, Wang Chong and de Wusseli, the 2 supreme commanders of the Tang dynasty and the Western Turks, had finally reached an agreement. But the atmosphere had not relaxed in the slightest. On the contrary, it had reached a fever pitch. Qianli, get ready. If something goes wrong, immediately stop de Wusseli and save Chen Bin. While everyone's attention was focused on Wang Chong and de Wusseli, no one noticed that Gao Xianji, who had been standing behind Wang Chong this entire time, had used a secret technique to whisper into Cheng Qianli's ear. Wang Chong and de Wusseli had reached a deal amidst the calm, but few people noticed that beneath this calm surface was boundless killing intent and turmoil. De Wusseli and Wang Chong had agreed to a count of 3 before attacking. One hand over the person, the other hand over the item. In that brief moment, Wang Chong could only draw de Wusseli's attention to the formation phenomena written on the letter and convince him that it was real. Only then could Wang Chong succeed. But if de Wusseli felt that he had been tricked or that what Wang Chong had given him wasn't real, then he would definitely attack Chen Bin. In that instant, he would definitely turn around and attack Chen Bin. At that time, Chen Bin would assuredly die. Moreover, because Chen Bin was already in his hands and closest to him, not even Gao Xianji would be able to save him. Understood. Qing Qinli nodded almost imperceptibly, a grave expression on his face. 3. A voice that was as heavy as iron and resounding suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. With this voice, the deal between Wang Chong and De Wussili began. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy and somber. Gotcha. De Wussili's well-defined fingers tightened around Chen Bin's neck. His expression was cold, completely different from when he had been negotiating with Wang Chong. Gotcha. Chapter 10:17. 2. As De Wussili called out the second number, the atmosphere grew even more somber. Everyone remained motionless, but an invisible tension began to spread through the air. Everyone's eyes sharpened, no longer showing the slightest laziness. At this moment, whoosh! Wang Chong suddenly took the third and final piece of paper from his bosom. The frosty white paper was extremely thin, and in the sunlight, one could faintly make out the tiny lines of words within. De Wussili blinked, and then, as if attracted by some invisible energy, he couldn't help but look over. At the same time, the others began to look over. Formation phenomena. Only with this final scroll would the formation be complete. Formation phenomena represented a high level of formation mastery. It was not just a chant or a powerful formation. If one could comprehend its secrets, the celestial wolf illusory formation that the Western Turks were renowned for would be able to reach an even higher level and form their own formation phenomena. At that time, the celestial wolf cavalry would be even more difficult to stop. And the Uzun's great scarlet sun formation was on the same level as the celestial wolf illusory formation, but it had also not reached the highest level. If one could obtain the secret of formation phenomena, they could also reach an even higher level and form their own formation phenomena for the great scarlet sun formation. This was a temptation that no one could resist. Prime Minister. In the rear of the group, several dozen zhang away from Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoge, Huoba Senji's eyes flickered and he subconsciously licked his lips, a hint of desire on his face. Although he had come to avenge and kill the Wuxian cavalry to uphold the reputation of the Uzun Empire's cavalry, if he could comprehend formation phenomena and bring the great scarlet sun formation to an even higher level, why wouldn't he be happy? After all, the Uzun Plateau also had legends of supreme formations. 1. Finally, it was the final moment. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Wang Chong, De Wussili, Gao Xianji, and Huishu Wuzong all tensed their muscles like a fully drawn bow. Boom! In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the air rumbled. The first to make a move was not De Wussili, but Wang Chong. Chi! In a flash of white light, the final letter flew out of Wang Chong's hand. However, this letter was not directed at De Wussili. Instead, it was directed diagonally in an empty direction. De Wussili's eyelids twitched, and he was instantly attracted by the letter. His expression seemed calm, but there was a hint of nervousness between his brows. A ball of light flickered in Wang Chong's hand as he aimed it at the letter floating in the air. It seemed like he was prepared to make a move at any moment to destroy the formation phenomena. Pang! Without any hesitation, De Wussili flicked his wrist and sent Chen Bin flying from his horse by a hair's breadth. Wang Chong! You can have your man, but give me the formation phenomena. De Wussili had thrown Chen Bin in the opposite direction of the letter Wang Chong had sent him. His voice boomed through the air as De Wussili tossed Chen Bin toward a deserted area. Moreover, there was a great distance between him and Wang Chong's letter. If Wang Chong had wanted to save Chen Bin, he would not have had the time to destroy the third letter containing the formation phenomena. Similarly, if De Wussili had wanted to obtain the formation phenomena, he would not have had the time to kill Chen Bin. On this point, both Wang Chong and De Wussili had clearly thought of the same thing. Boom! In a flash of light, the two experts, Wang Chong and De Wussili, shot through the air at the same time. One pounced on Chen Bin, the other on the third letter in the air. In a battle between experts, every second mattered. For experts of Wang Chong and De Wusseli's level, far too many things could happen in a single second. Their top priority was to obtain what they wanted. Wang Chong. Eat my halberd. De Wusseli was overjoyed to see Wang Chong pounce on Chen Bin. Just as the two passed each other and were closest to each other, De Wusseli did not hesitate to gather all the stellar energy in his body and pour it into the black halberd in his hand. In the blink of an eye, the black halberd transformed into a furious dragon, dragging a long tail of flames behind it as it ruthlessly shot towards Wang Chong. Almost at the same time, there was a heaven-shaking roar. In the instant that De Wusseli leaped forward, there was a flash of light as Wang Chong rapidly transformed into God King Yama. Boom! His left palm blocked the full-force strike of De Wusseli's black halberd while the huge Vajra pestle in his right hand smashed towards De Wusseli. Do it! In a flash, Wang Chong and De Wusseli were not the only ones to act. Behind De Wusseli, Shamshak and Chechen Benba had been staring at De Wusseli's left palm. Upon receiving De Wusseli's signal, the two brigadier generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate immediately lunged at Chen Bin, who had been thrown into the air by De Wusseli like hungry tigers. The more Wang Chong cared, the more it proved how important Chen Bin was. Most importantly, if Chen Bin was killed in front of them, it would deal a massive blow to the morale of the entire Tang dynasty army. For this reason alone, it was worth it for the two of them to kill Chen Bin. Shameless scoundrel! You dare! Next to Wang Chong, Qing Qianli's eyes flashed with cold light as he charged at Chen Bin. The atmosphere on the battlefield instantly became tense. But the greatest variable in this transaction was the silent Gao Xianji. There are some things that don't belong to you, De Wusseli. Don't get carried away by your wishful thinking. A dignified and aloof voice resounded in everyone's ears. Boom! Gao Xianji's body exploded forward, moving faster than anyone else's. The moment he lunged forward, all the experts on the battlefield instantly paled in comparison to the storm of energy unleashed by Gao Xianji. Damn it! De Wusseli's face contorted. There were countless experts in the world, and every empire and faction had its own elite great generals. But of all these great generals, Gao Xianji was the most enviable. Even Abu Muslim treated Gao Xianji with utmost respect, so one could easily imagine his strength. Gao Xianji. I've already released him. Do you want to break the agreement? De Wusseli's heart tightened. He had originally been a little suspicious, but Gao Xianji's reaction had dispelled any of his doubts. If this wasn't a real formation phenomena, why would a top-class great general like Gao Xianji be so nervous as to personally snatch it? Gao Xianji, don't even think about it. De Wusseli's muscles tensed up and his veins bulged. He no longer dared to tangle with Wang Chong, and his body shot forward with astonishing speed toward the letter in the air. De Wusseli's reaction was fast enough, but there was someone else who reacted even faster than De Wusseli. Huishu Wuzong's body was tense. By the time De Wusseli had counted to 2, he had been ready to strike. But Gao Xianji's attack had caused Huishu Wuzong to change his target from Wang Chong and Chen Bin to Gao Xianji. Rumble. The ground suddenly shook, and a golden saber chi shot out majestically, chopping at Gao Xianji in the air. Boom! 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 Amidst the violent explosions, the two's auras clashed heavily. Peerless saber chi and force chi swept out in all directions. The dust from the explosions surged and covered the sky. Damn it! My formation phenomena. De Wusseli's face was fraught with anxiety. Without the slightest hesitation, golden stellar energy erupted from his body, transforming into a golden barrier that blocked the shockwaves. At this moment, De Wusseli had chosen to use his stellar energy to block the shockwaves of the clash between the two great generals. Bzzz. De Wusseli's body shot forward, his two fingers grabbing the letter in the air and then swiftly drawing it into his palm. As he felt the peculiar abrasiveness of the paper in his palm, Wuxia felt like a great burden had been lifted from his heart. Let's go. The moment the second scroll of formation phenomena was in his hand, Wuxia immediately used the celestial wolf's divine procession and shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Wuxia didn't even care about Chen Bin. Of course, most importantly, Wuxia could already see a massive monster approaching the battlefield. Roar! The gigantic beast roared. Before anyone could react, a black shadow grew bigger and bigger, falling from the sky and landing heavily on the ground. The heavy body was like a meteor crashing into the ground, causing the earth to quake. Giant ape. Shamshak and Che Kuenbenba, who had been fighting with Qing Qianli, felt their hearts tremble at the sight of this mountainous figure. The fighting spirit in their hearts immediately vanished, and they immediately turned and fled. The giant ape possessed peerless strength. Not even great generals were a match for it, much less brigadier generals like them. Want to run? Aren't you going to leave anything behind? Wang Chong inwardly sneered at this sight. Shamshak and Che Kuenbenba had dared to attack Chen Bin and ruin Wang Chong's chances, so how could they allow the two of them to so easily retreat? Bang! With a thought from Wang Chong, the stellar energy Vajra pestle in his hand shot like a shooting star toward Shamshak's back. Almost at the same time, the air rumbled, and another huge rock tumbled in the air with a sharp whistle, heavily crashing into Chekenbenba. At this moment, Wang Chong had controlled the giant ape to throw out a massive boulder. Boom! Boom! With miserable screams, Shamask and Chekenbenba were struck in the back at the same time. Vomiting blood, the two of them fled at top speed. Roar! The giant ape roared and leaped into the air in pursuit of the Uzun army and the Western Turks. This time, the giant ape was no longer bare-handed. A massive metal cudgel more than 10 meters long had appeared in its hand. The cudgel stirred the air around it, stirring up an astonishing aura. Go, go, go. Let's go. In the distance, the thousands of Mutri great cavalry and celestial wolf cavalry had long ago been on guard against the giant ape. Throughout the entire transaction, although the giant ape had always been at the back and was a distance away, there was nothing more eye-catching than it. To these elite cavalry, the greatest threat was not Wang Chong or Gao Xianji, but this giant ape. Chapter 10:18. Boom! There was an earth-shattering crash as a giant metal cudgel slammed into the cavalry at the very back. Aya! A series of miserable screams rang out as several dozen Mutri great cavalry and celestial wolf cavalry were unable to dodge in time and were struck by the giant cudgels hurled by the giant ape. The immense force of the cudgels instantly killed them on the spot. Now that the deal was complete and Chen Bin had been tossed over to Li Sai by Qing Qianli, there was no longer any need for the two sides to continue working together. How could Wang Chong let go of this opportunity? But right now, the one who was most anxious was not Wang Chong, but Gao Xianji. Wuxia, where do you think you're going? Leave behind the formation phenomena. Gao Xianji's speed was as fast as lightning, enough to strike fear into the hearts of any expert. The air rumbled as Gao Xianji left a long trail of white qi in his wake as he chased after Wuxia at an unbelievable speed. Boom! The air split apart like a wave as a vast stream of sword qi, more than 10 zhang long, slashed at Wuxia in the air. Gao Xianji seemed to have decided that Wuxia was the one who would chase him relentlessly. Meanwhile, a sharp aura had already locked onto Wuxia, as if he would not rest until he took back the formation phenomena. Bastard! Wuxia was both shocked and enraged. In the past, he really would not have been afraid of fighting with Gao Xianji, but now, a single blow from the two of them would be enough to pulverize the letter in his hand. In a battle between experts, every second mattered. Under these circumstances, Wuxia did not even have the time to open the letter and memorize it. De Wuxia also believed that Gao Xianji would never give him this chance. Huishu Wuzong, help me block Gao Xianji. After this is done, I will share the formation phenomena with you. De Wuxia suddenly shouted as he tightly gripped the letter in his hand. De Wuxia was still skeptical about the formation phenomena in the second half of the scroll, but now he was 80% convinced. If it wasn't true, Gao Xianji wouldn't have chased after him so relentlessly and acted as if he wanted to fight him to the death. This brat is really gullible. He doesn't even understand the principle that all is fair in war. The Central Plainsmen sure are honest. De Wuxia thought mockingly in his heart. He was now certain that Wang Chong had most likely not discussed the deal with Gao Xianji and had forcibly made the decision. If that wasn't the case, he would never have had the opportunity to take advantage of it. On the other side, Huishu Wuzong had already fled a distance away. When he heard De Wuxia's words, his eyes flashed, and he immediately changed his mind. Just as everyone was retreating into the distance, Huishu Wuzong bent his body and abruptly charged toward Gao Xianji. Boom! The golden Vairocana Buddha suddenly appeared in the void, and then a huge saber chi that could split mountains and split seas slashed toward Gao Xianji. Boom! The shocking saber chi and sword chi collided, and the peerless sword chi swept out in all directions, stirring up the air and soil within a radius of 150 feet, triggering a series of explosions. However, this simple collision immediately won De Wuxia an important opportunity to catch his breath. Nei could only hear the warhorse neighing as De Wuxia suddenly accelerated, leaving a series of afterimages in the void, and quickly disappeared into the distance. On the other side, the enraged Gao Xianji was invincible, and even Huishu Wuzong could not stop him. Swish! A heaven-shaking bolt of sword chi tore through the armor on Huishu Huizong's left arm, pulverizing it like a piece of paper. Even the arm beneath the armor had been cut open, blood spurting out. However, Huishu Wuzong only frowned, and there was no change in his expression, as if the arm that Gao Xianji had stabbed was someone else's arm. Go! After blocking Gao Xianji with his saber, Huishu Wuzong immediately shot into the distance without hesitation. Although Huishu Wuzong was not as strong as Gao Xianji, if he focused on escaping, not even Gao Xianji would be able to stop him. Lord Protector General, there's no need to worry about them. Come back. As the ashen-faced Gao Xianji was continuing his pursuit, a voice came from behind him. Wang Chong had come up from behind and called out to stop him. Duluan Ruozhen had already left, and with him present in this transaction, Gao Xianji wouldn't be able to gain much of an advantage if he continued to pursue. Being able to kill a few Mutri Great Cavalry and Celestial Wolf Cavalry was already quite good. What a pity. I was just a little bit away from catching up. Gao Xianji spitefully said as he looked into the distance. Wang Chong was going to save them, and he was going to destroy the formation phenomena. The reason Gao Xianji hadn't stopped this transaction was because he had made up his mind to destroy the letter with the formation phenomena written on it the moment the transaction was completed. This way, he would be able to help Wang Chong save Chen Bin and also stop De Wuxia's scheme. Alas, a single Huishu Wuzong had ruined everything. Lord Protector General, there's no need to worry. Let them go. To Gao Xianji's surprise, Wang Chong faintly smiled as he looked in the direction De Wuxia's forces had gone. Gao Xianji's heart trembled at Wang Chong's words, and he immediately turned his head. The smile on Wang Chong's lips caused Gao Xianji's mind to jolt. Countless thoughts flitted through his mind, and he seemed to understand something. Lord Protector General, the transaction is complete. Let's go back and talk. As if already guessing at what Gao Xianji would ask, Wang Chong smiled and spoke first. Gao Xianji nodded, gathered his army, and together with the giant ape, they set off for the distant city of Talas. In the distance, dust churned. Finally free from the pursuit of the Tang dynasty and no longer in sight of the city of Talas, De Wuxia finally breathed a sigh of relief. Great General, congratulations. For a Tang dynasty soldier to be exchanged for a set of formation phenomena, there is no better deal than this. With this set of formation phenomena, the Western Turkic Khaganate has a chance of revitalizing itself and the great general will be able to reach an even higher status. Accompanied by the clattering of hooves, a voice suddenly came from behind. Daluan Ruozan, mounted on a highland steed, was catching up. As he gazed at Dewusili, Daluan Ruozan gave a meaningful smile. Thump. This voice caused Dewusili's heart to thump. Now that the enemy was gone, the people Dewusili least wanted to see were the Uzan people. Prime Minister is too serious. I just want to use it to perfect my celestial wolf illusory formation. I don't have any grand ambitions. Dewusili pretended not to understand. Our Uzan's great scarlet sun formation also happens to have some flaws that require the use of formation phenomena to perfect. Why don't Great General let us take a look? Daluan Ruozan faintly smiled, but his eyes turned sharp. Before trading with the Tang dynasty, the two sides had agreed that the Tang dynasty's formation phenomena would be given to the Uzan. But Dewusili had gotten what he wanted, and yet he was feigning ignorance at a time like this. But Daluan Ruozan was no easy fool. Buzz. Daluan Ruozan's words immediately caused the mood to turn solemn. Dewusili said nothing, and as he sat on his black steed, his body clearly stiffened. Formation phenomena. Dewusili had exerted himself again and again, finally managing to get Wang Chong to agree. Although he had made a promise to Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wuzong, he had only been forced by the circumstances. How could it be easy for Dewusili to hand it over now? What? Is Great General unwilling to give it up? Daluan Ruozan's sharp eyes seemed to be able to see into Dewusili's mind. Humph. With a cold snort, Huishu Wuzong and Dewusili next to Daluan Ruozan suddenly paled. Although the two of them did not say anything, they both placed their palms on the weapons at their waists. At that moment, their auras became extremely sharp. Dewusili, we also put in a lot of effort in this transaction. Are you thinking of burning the bridge after crossing the river and going back on your word? Dusong Mangpoj coldly said. The mood instantly tensed. Clang clang clang. All the Mutri great cavalry behind Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wuzong unsheathed their sabers, their blades gleaming with cold light as they aimed at Dewusili and the Western Turks. At almost the same moment, the celestial wolf cavalry grimaced and began to unsheath their swords, aiming them at the Mutri great cavalry. Just a moment ago, the two armies had been fighting side by side, but now, they were pointing their sabers at each other. Ha ha ha, as the mood reached a fever pitch and seemed on the verge of a bloody clash, Dewusili suddenly laughed. Prime Minister and generals, what are you thinking? I, Dewusili, am not the sort of person to go back on my word. It's that crafty brat from the Tang dynasty who actually wanted to use formation phenomena to drive a wedge between us. But how could we let him do as he wished? Daluan Ruozan, these are the two pieces of paper from before. I've already read through them and memorized them. Take these two pieces of paper. Without the slightest hesitation, Dewusili took out the first two pieces of paper that Wang Chong had given him and tossed them over without even glancing at them. Let alone Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj, even Daluan Ruozan was a little surprised by this sudden action. Swish. Although he was alarmed, Dusong Mangpoj's arm twitched as he subconsciously caught the letter Dewusili had tossed over. As he opened the paper and glanced at its contents, Dusong Mangpoj couldn't help but widen his eyes. Although Dewusili had not allowed them to see the two pieces of paper, just from the artistic conception of the words on them, Dusong Mangpoj could tell that Dewusili had not been hiding anything. He really had given him the two original copies of formation phenomena. This scoundrel, even the illustrious and experienced Dusong Mangpoj, an imperial great general on par with Dewusili, found it somewhat difficult to understand what Dewusili was thinking. A moment ago, he had appeared extremely unwilling, but now he had become so straightforward. It was truly difficult to think of the two as the same person. Great General, very straightforward. We are all allies, so be at ease. Once we have read through these 2 pieces of paper, we will return them to Great General. As Daluan Ruozhen spoke, he lightly brushed his sleeve, his expression relaxed and carefree. As he spoke, Daluan Ruozhen made a slight gesture. A moment later, his saber was sheathed, and the clattering of metal rang out as the Mutri Great Cavalry sheathed their weapons. The extremely tense atmosphere was instantly dissolved at this moment. There's no need for that. Prime Minister can keep them. Dewusseli laughed, his attitude completely different from before. Chapter 1019. Milord. Uzun's men didn't do anything in this matter. From start to finish, it was Milord's sole effort. Isn't giving it to them too easy? Once Daluan Ruozhen and Wuxia Wuzong had left, Shamshak couldn't help but say. That's right. In the end, Uzun is still our enemy. Isn't giving them the formation phenomena just nurturing a tiger and inviting calamity? Chechen Benba agreed. On this matter, Chechen Benba's attitude was strangely identical to Shamshak's. He truly couldn't understand why Dewusseli would give the formation phenomena to Uzun's men. But both Chechen Benba and Shamshak had developed a habit of absolute obedience to Dewusseli. Thus, when Daluan Ruozhen was present, the 2 of them had said nothing. Now is not the time to fall out with Uzun. Moreover, Daluan Ruozhen isn't that easy to deal with. Didn't you see? If we can't get the formation phenomena, Wuxia Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoj will immediately attack. Dewusseli said. Shamshak and Chechen Benba fell silent. Wuxia Wuzong and Dusong Mengpoj were both extremely powerful great generals, and they also had the wise and resourceful Daluan Ruozhen. Now truly was not the time to fall out with Uzun. Moreover, Uzun had brought far more soldiers with him. If we have to give it to them sooner or later, we might as well give it to them straight away. Dewusseli indifferently said. But, Shamshak and Chechen Benba wanted to say something, but Dewusseli quickly interrupted them. No buts. Do the 2 of you really think I'm that stupid? Would he really hand over all the formation phenomena to them so easily? Dewusseli said coldly. Shamshak and Chechen Benba were stunned, but very quickly, the 2 of them thought of something and felt relieved. Although he did not know how Dewusseli did it in such a short time, there was no doubt that Dewusseli had done something to those letters. My lord is wise. At this moment, the 2 of them were completely convinced. Dewusseli just smiled and looked in the direction where Daluan Ruozhen, Wuxia Wuzong, and the others left. A profound light flashed in his eyes. You have your Zhongliang scheme, but I have my own ladder to climb over the wall. Although Daluan Ruozhen had given the 3 sheets of formation phenomena to Daluan Ruozhen, not even Daluan Ruozhen had expected that Wang Chong had not touched a single word on the first 2 sheets. He had even given the 3rd sheet to the Tibetans without hiding anything. But in the instant that he handed it over, no one noticed that he had already tampered with it with his stellar energy, blurring a few key words on one of the volumes of formation phenomena at an extremely fast speed. Although only a few words had been changed, without these key words, the meaning of the entire formation phenomena was completely different. There was a reason why Dewusseli had been so straightforward. Daluan Ruozhen, I've already given you the things. If there's a problem, you can't come looking for me. Dewusseli laughed darkly and quickly led the army back to the camp. Although Dewusseli had done all he could to plan, not even he could have imagined that the situation would develop in a completely different direction. 10 some li away, Prime Minister, with these formation phenomena, no matter what, we can at least give an explanation to the Tsenpo. After leaving the Western Turkic camp, Wuxia Wuzong solemnly handed the 3 letters containing the ultimate secrets of the formation phenomena to Daluan Ruozhen, a weight lifted from his heart. Daluan Ruozhen had left the royal capital's prison with tens of thousands of elite cavalry and all the Mutri Great Cavalry, all without the Tsenpo's consent. In the War of the Southwest, Daluan Ruozhen's defeat was already a criminal, and now that he was mobilizing his own soldiers, he was even more guilty. However, with the help of something as legendary as formation phenomena, everything would be different. Although both Wuxia Huizong and Dusong Mengpoj appeared extremely calm in front of Du Wuxili, as if they didn't care too much, this was only because they were imperial great generals who had concealed their cultivation very well. How could the two of them not understand the meaning and weight of true formation phenomena? This was something that could raise the strength of the entire Uzun Empire. To everyone's surprise, Daluan Ruozan, who had just a moment ago appeared to be very concerned about formation phenomena to Du Wuxili, didn't even look at the 2 volumes of formation phenomena before tossing them to his aide. It was like he was throwing away 2 pieces of insignificant paper. Don't get too optimistic. Wuxia, Dusong, the contents of these 2 volumes aren't as important as you imagine them to be. Daluan Ruozan had a relaxed expression, but his first words left the 2 great generals of the Uzun Empire dumbstruck. Ah! Both of them were dumbfounded. Prime Minister, are you saying that the formation phenomena that Wang Chong gave us is fake? Wuxia Huizong asked in shock. It's fake to begin with, so how could it be real? Daluan Ruozan said decisively with a wave of his sleeve. But, didn't we all see the mantra from before? Just 60 of the celestial wolf cavalry were able to create the illusion of formation phenomena, even though they were just beginning to learn it. This was something that no formation could achieve. If it weren't for formation phenomena, it wouldn't have this kind of power. Dusong Mengpoj also spoke up. Although he had also wondered if these 3 sheets of paper could be fake, he couldn't have been as certain as Daluan Ruozan that the formation phenomena were fake without even looking at them. That's right. All of us saw it at the time. Wuxia Huizong also agreed. Originally, Wuxia Huizong had been rather happy to have obtained the 3 authentic sheets from Du Wuxili, but now, all his excitement had vanished. And if these are all fake, doesn't that mean that Du Wuxili also got a fake? Du Wuxili liked to play the pig to eat the tiger, but he was only playing the pig to eat the tiger. He wasn't truly clumsy. It was very difficult to believe that Wang Chong had managed to fool 3 great generals in such a short time, and from Du Wuxili's reaction, it was clear that he also believed it to be real. But Daluan Ruozan never lied. If he was certain that the formation phenomena were fake, then there was an 80 to 90% chance that it was as he said. Daluan Ruozan only smiled. Du Wuxili doesn't understand him, so it's normal for him to be fooled by his methods. But, I understand him far too well. This isn't our first time fighting with him, and given his personality, he would never hand over something like formation phenomena to anyone. Du Wuxili is just being wishful thinking. But those phenomena, Dusong Mengpoj still found it somewhat difficult to believe that the contents of the 3 sheets of paper were all fake. That's where he's brilliant. If I'm not wrong, the simplified version of formation phenomena that he gave me at the beginning, including the first half of the formation phenomena, are all real. He's mixing half of it with half of it. What a good trick. Although Daluan Ruozan had been involved in this transaction, he had spent the majority of it as a bystander. In truth, he was also rather curious as to how Wang Chong had managed to fool Du Wuxili. But even Daluan Ruozan had to admire Wang Chong's daring. But if Prime Minister knew, why didn't he warn him? After all, we are still allies. Wuxia Huizong slightly creased his brow. It's not that I didn't want to warn him, but that even if we did, it would have been useless. Daluan Ruozan shook his head. Du Wuxili wants the formation phenomena far too much. If we had warned him at that time, he would have thought that we had ulterior motives. Moreover, we have no evidence, so why would Du Wuxili believe us? Daluan Ruozan's words left Wuxia Huizong and Dusong Mengpoj dumbfounded. These 2 top-class great generals of the Uzun Empire were speechless. In the end, the Uzun Empire and the Western Turks were only temporary allies, and their friendship was not that deep. How could Du Wuxili possibly give up on this transaction because of a few words from them? Let's go. We'll talk after we return to camp. With these words, Daluan Ruozhen quickly led his men away. Wang Chong, why did you stop me from pursuing Dewusili? Meanwhile, in the distant main hall of Talas, Gao Xianji, Qing Qianli, Wang Yan, Banahan, and all the other generals of the Tang dynasty had gathered together. Before he had even warmed his seat, Gao Xianji couldn't help but ask the question on his mind. That's right. Marquis, Dewusili is still our enemy. If he obtains the formation phenomena, he'll be even more difficult to deal with in the future. Shi Yuanqing, Banahan, and the other generals echoed his sentiments. No matter how one looked at it, Dewusili had obtained a complete victory in this transaction. More importantly, once the formation phenomena got out, it would create even more terrifying opponents. Lord Protector General, be at ease. This matter is far from simple. Even if Dewusili gets those 3 pieces of paper, he won't be able to obtain the formation phenomena. Wang Chong faintly smiled, a confident expression on his face. Wang Chong's words instantly silenced the noisy chatter in the hall. Like a stone falling to the ground, the people in the hall froze at Wang Chong's words, and then they relaxed. So you mean, that what Dewusili obtained was fake? Gao Xianji said. His greatest worry in this transaction was that Wang Chong would really hand over the formation phenomena to Dewusili, allowing the Western Turkic Khaganate to grow even stronger. But from what Wang Chong had said, he was probably overthinking things. The 3 pieces of paper Wang Chong had given to Dewusili were probably fake. How could that be? With Daluan Ruozhen present in this transaction, deceiving Dewusili is easy, but deceiving Daluan Ruozhen is much more difficult. And besides, Dewusili isn't that easy to deceive. Wang Chong faintly smiled. He sat across from Gao Xianji, a long table between them. At the same time, he extended a finger and lightly tapped on the table. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.